Chapter 496. The judge's face stiffened when he saw the result of the test. Even the little bit of joy he had previously felt disappeared. The audience was speechless, and they felt that it was unbelievable. The pupils of the alchemists from Heavenly Pill City and Heavenly Shine City shrank, and their bodies trembled. They failed. They all failed. The elixirs they refined didn't meet the requirements. They were really eliminated in the elimination round. Bufang didn't feel anything about this. He grabbed the Cloud Mist restaurant signboard with one hand and put on his shoulder. Step by step, he walked out of the arena. The audience looked at him in shock, and they couldn't help but open up a path for him. There was only one person who advanced to the 8th arena, and that was the only chef in this year's Magical Hand Conference. Hiss! Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. They felt as if something incredible had happened. This kind of thing was simply too unimaginable. The alchemists from Heavenly Pill City and Heavenly Shine City were in a daze. They were geniuses, and they were extremely talented. They were famous in the world of alchemy. However, they didn't even pass the elimination round and were eliminated. This was a huge blow to them. If it wasn't for the aroma, how could I have refined such a trashy elixir? The alchemist from Heavenly Shine City was so angry that his face became distorted. He was so angry that he almost went crazy. His whole body trembled and trembled. The alchemist from Heavenly Pill City shook his head and sighed. He was still quite optimistic about this matter. Of course, it would be a lie to say that he didn't feel any resentment. If it wasn't for the enticing aroma emitted by Bufang when he was cooking, he wouldn't have been eliminated in the elimination round. After all, he was a genius who had the chance to enter the top 50. However, there were no ifs. I lost. I can only blame myself for not being skilled enough. I still need to work hard on the path of alchemy. After sighing, the alchemist turned around and left the arena. The judge was the most upset. He put away his jade talisman and felt as though he could already feel the storm of curses coming from the chief judge. Yesterday, there were still 4 people who passed. This time, there was only one person. This was something that had never happened in a Magical Hand Conference. The referee scratched his head. He was suddenly afraid of meeting Bufang again. This guy, as long as he was in the ring, nothing good would happen. Damn it, if it's still him next time, I won't be the referee anymore. It was so exciting. The referee was in tears. The audience was extremely excited and in an uproar. Another exciting piece of news broke out in the 8th arena. There were 50 participants in the entire arena, including the genius alchemists from the Heavenly Pill City and the Heavenly Shine City. However, almost all of them were eliminated, and only one of them managed to advance to the next round. And the participant who advanced to the next round was not an apothecary, a physician, or a poison master. It was a chef. A chef had participated in the Magical Hand Conference, and he had even defeated all the outstanding talents in the elimination round, obtaining victory. Were those alchemists retarded? When this news spread, all the spectators were surprised and excited. A dark horse in this competition was the most attractive. On the other hand, the alchemists were united against a common enemy. They were alchemists, and the dignity of alchemists needed to be protected by themselves. That chef was the public enemy of all alchemists, especially those alchemists who were killed by Bufang. They were enraged to the extreme. Actually, the one who suffered the most was the referee. As expected, this referee was once again scolded by the chief judge. He was so sad that he found it hard to breathe. In particular, because he had received too many reports, he was suspended from being a referee by the judges. What a sad thing. The referee felt wronged, but he was really innocent. However, he also heaved a sigh of relief. If he couldn't be a referee, then so be it. As long as he didn't have to face Bufang, it would be fine. Senior brother Liu was eliminated. Duan Yun's pupils constricted when he heard the news. A genius alchemist ranked in the top 50 of the Pill Pagoda in the Heavenly Pill City had actually been eliminated in the elimination round. This was a huge blow to Duan Yun. Senior brother Liu sat on the warship of the Heavenly Pill City with his head hung low, and he seemed to have lost his soul. The Magical Hand Conference was a place for alchemists to prove themselves. It was the most important stage in the eyes of every alchemist. They had made countless preparations for this magical hand conference. They wanted to show off their skills in a magical hand conference and amaze the world with a single brilliant feat, however. Senior brother Liu didn't even have the chance to show off his true strength before he was eliminated. This was a heavy blow to him. I heard that only 1 out of the 50 people who participated in the competition advanced to the next round. Moreover, that person wasn't an alchemist. The other alchemists from the Heavenly Pill City said to Duan Yun with a sigh on their faces. Duan Yun was taken aback. It was so cruel. Only 1 out of 50 people advanced to the next round? How could such a thing happen? Out of the 50 people who participated in the competition, around 15 of them advanced to the second round of elimination. That's right. Did you know? When I found out that the person who eliminated senior brother Liu was a chef, do you know how shocked I was? Chef? Duan Yin was taken aback. How could it be a chef? How could a chef participate in the Magical Hand Conference? That's right, a chef. That chef's dishes were so fragrant that they made it impossible for people to concentrate on refining elixirs. It was said that more than 40 people's furnaces exploded in that competition. He's simply insane. The Heavenly Pill City's alchemists exclaimed in surprise. Duan Yin took a deep breath. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. Did that chef want to challenge all the alchemists? He actually dared to be so high-profile? Junior brother Duan Yun. Let me tell you, the most important thing is that every dish cooked by that chef was at the level of a 9th grade elixir. It's inconceivable that they advanced to the next round. Think about it. Isn't the appearance of such a dish a blatant challenge to the status of alchemists? Wait, Duan Yun's body trembled, and he sucked in a breath of cold air. A dish that had the effects of an elixir? Why did it sound so familiar? Duan Yun couldn't help but think of a restaurant in a small empire in the southern region. That small restaurant was located in a remote area, but it was bustling with people. That restaurant's dish seemed to be at the level of an elixir. After eating it, its effects were not any weaker than an ordinary elixir. Could it be that the person who participated in the competition was from the same sect as Onarbu? Damn, if that was really the case, it would be a tough battle. Duan Yun's gray hair fluttered in the wind, and his whole body trembled. He knew very well how powerful Onarbu was. Senior brother, do you know when the chef's next match will be? I want to go and take a look. Duan Yun asked. The alchemist was taken aback for a moment. Then he shook his head and said, Nowadays, as long as that chef is involved in a match, it will be extremely popular. In fact, that chef will be participating in the 5th arena's elimination match. Moreover, I've received news that this elimination match will be personally supervised by the chief judge. The 5th arena? Duan Yin was taken aback for a moment. Then, a strange expression appeared on his face. Senior brother Zhang, are you going to compete in the 5th arena? Duan Yin looked at the youth in front of him and asked in a low voice. I'm going to compete in the 5th arena? What the F***CK? I was so focused on the chef's position that I forgot to look at my own. The youth's face instantly paled. He turned around and ran into the distance. Not long after, Duan Yun heard a hoarse and miserable scream. Oh my God! The second round of the elimination match would be held in the 5th arena. For hours quickly passed by. Bufong carried the Cloud Mist Restaurant signboard and arrived in front of the 5th arena. Looking at the tightly packed arena, Bufong was somewhat dumbfounded. What was going on? You followed beside him and coldly looked at the crowd surrounding the arena. As if sensing Bufong's predicament, Yu's long black hair fluttered in the wind. She took a step forward and stood in front of Bufong. She slowly raised her slender and fair arm. Open. An indifferent voice rang out. Then, black true energy gushed out from Yu's arm. With a rumbling sound, a path was immediately formed in the crowd, as if it could topple mountains and overturn the seas. Both sides of the path were filled with people who fell to the ground. Bufong was taken aback, and the corners of his mouth twitched. This woman, was really domineering. You glanced at him and flipped her long black hair, as if she was acting Tsundere. Tap, tap, tap. The surrounding audience was somewhat dumbfounded. They watched as Bufong, who was carrying the signboard, walked step by step toward the arena. You stood below the arena, looking extremely cold. No one dared to come within a few meters of her. The oppressive aura emitted from her body was too terrifying. Walking to his own bronze arena, Bufong put down his signboard and took out the black turtle constellation walk, as usual. The heavy black turtle constellation walk smashed onto the bronze arena. With a loud bang, the entire arena shook. On the arena, the other contestants arrived. Now, Bufong's reputation was no longer as unknown as it was when he first came here. When these alchemists found out that the person participating in the elimination round with them was actually the chef Bufong, they felt as if 10,000 black dogs were galloping in their hearts. Senior Brother Zhang of the Heavenly Pill City had a deathly pale complexion, and his face was filled with despair. It's about to begin. I wonder how many people will be eliminated this time. Competing with this chef is the most miserable thing in this year's Magical Hand Conference. I'm suddenly looking forward to this chef entering the top 50. Don't you think it'll be a good scene to see him compete with those genius alchemists? The audience chattered excitedly. As for the alchemists on the arena, they were all tensed up. They didn't dare to relax. The head judge arrived. He was a Three Clouds alchemist from the Heavenly Mist City Pill Tower. He was a dignified man. He had a solemn expression on his face as he clasped his hands behind his back and stepped onto the arena. The moment he stepped onto the arena, his gaze landed on Bufong. His gaze was like a sharp sword. Was this the chef who caused the elimination of 2 large batches of contestants? He wanted to see what kind of tricks this guy was going to play. In front of him, no one dared to play any tricks. As if he felt the gaze of the head judge, Bufong raised his head and met the sharp gaze of the head judge. The corners of his mouth curled up, and he rolled his eyes. Bufong played with the dragon bone kitchen knife for a while before chopping it on the chopping board. Then, in front of everyone's shocked gazes, he took out a giant crab from the system's dimensional storage. It was a giant crab that was tied up with hemp rope. The crab's mouth was still spitting bubbles. Everyone's heart trembled. What the F***CK? Did this chef come up with a new dish? Chapter 497. Crab? Such a big crab? The chief judge was slightly dumbfounded. If he wasn't mistaken, that should be an 8th grade spirit sea beast. It was a spirit sea beast from the boundless sea. This kind of spirit beast was rarely seen on the mainland. As an alchemist, he had read about it in some ancient books. The crab seeds could be used to concoct elixirs. For female cultivators, it could keep their skin tender and smooth. However, why did Bufong bring out such a big crab? Was he going to cook it? The alchemists on the stage were already prepared to face a formidable enemy. They didn't know what kind of tricks Bufong would play this time. Knowing oneself and knowing one's enemy was the only way to win 100 battles. Therefore, they all knew about Bufong's previous deeds. In the first round, this guy made a stinky dish. That dish caused many people's furnaces to explode, and many people became dispirited. However, he still passed the preliminary round. In the second round, this guy didn't cook a stinky dish. Instead, he did the exact opposite. He made a fragrant oyster pancake, which caused many people's furnaces to explode. The genius alchemists of the Heavenly Pill City all collapsed. However, he still passed the elimination round. Now, who knew what this guy was going to do? The chief judge's face was cold as he looked at Bufong. His gaze was extremely sharp, and it seemed as though he wanted to see through this guy who specialized in stirring up trouble. However, he was quickly disappointed. This was because Bufong didn't even raise his eyelids. He didn't care about his gaze at all. This is the second round of the elimination round. I, Gongsun Chong, will be supervising all of you. I hope that you won't play any tricks. If I find out that you have done anything, I will punish you severely and disqualify you from the competition. The chief judge's words were very domineering. He clasped his hands behind his back and swept his gaze across the audience. Many people's hearts skipped a beat. The fact that the chief judge was supervising the competition personally showed how much importance he attached to this elimination round. After all, in the previous 2 rounds in which Bufong participated, the number of people who advanced to the next round was extremely high. Even the chief judge couldn't sit still. Brother Zhang looked at the back of Bu Fong from afar. He took a deep breath and forced himself to calm down. He had to be calm and could not be affected. The difficulty of the second elimination round has not changed from the first round. You still have to create a finished product that is equivalent to a middle grade 9 medicinal pill within half an hour. However, there is a quota this time around. Only the first 10 who complete the product will be able to advance. Those who exceed the 10th place will be eliminated. The chief judge said. His words were cold, and the rules of the competition were cold as well. However, this was why the Magical Hand Conference was so serious. However, what the chief judge did not expect was that after he finished speaking, the audience below the stage could not help but sneer and whisper to each other. What do you guys think? If less than 10 people advance to the next round, what should we do? I think the head judge is going to go crazy later. The chief judge will soon know the fear of being dominated by a chef. The whispers of the audience were heard by the head judge, and his face darkened. Why were these audience members rejoicing in someone else's misfortune? Don't they know that this competition is very serious? Silence. Now, I announce the start of the second elimination round. The chief judge said coldly. Below the stage, the judge who was temporarily dismissed widened his eyes and squeezed into the crowd to watch the competition. Although he was dismissed, he did not feel sad. He was still looking forward to Bu Fong's competition. He did not know what kind of dish Bu Fong would take out in this round. Crab. Was he going to be a crab? If he was going to be a crab, it should not affect the competition of the others, right? Following the chief judge's order, everyone began to move. On the stage, flames of various colors surged up violently, and the surrounding people began to crowd around. After all, Bu Fong's fame was not the same as it was in the past. There were many people watching his competition. Boom! Boom! The alchemy fire surged and steam rose. Those who could reach this stage were basically alchemists. Poison masters and doctors were rare. For example, in Bu Fong's competition, everyone except him was an alchemist. After all, not everyone was a monster like him. As for Bu Fong, he became the biggest dark horse in this Magical Hand Conference. Many of the audience members felt that Bu Fong had a high chance of advancing to the semifinals and entering the top 100. This time, Bu Fong did not choose to use the 10,000 bestial flames. He looked at the giant crab in front of him. This crab was caught by him in the Grand Serpentine City. At that time, the Oceanic tribe had attacked the city and all kinds of sea creatures had appeared. It was a nightmare for the Serpentine tribe. However, for Bu Fong, these sea creatures were rare ingredients. For example, that gigantic supreme mantis prawn was still in his system-dimensional bag. The reason why Bu Fong chose the crab was because he had his own ideas. Previously, he chose the oyster pancake. It was extremely fragrant, and its effects were not bad. It increased the reputation of the Cloud Mist restaurant. This gave Bu Fong a taste of sweetness. Thus, he decided to use the aroma of the crab to the end in this elimination round. If he cooked a crab, would it be fragrant? Of course it would be fragrant. The pan-fried flower crab was extremely fragrant. It was just an ordinary flower crab, but the taste was so similar. What if he used this 8th grade sea crab? The taste of an 8th grade ingredient was much better than that of a flower crab. With a flick of his finger, the golden dragon bone kitchen knife spun. Bu Fong waved it casually, and the knife cut off the shackles that bound the sea crab. Rip! After the shackles were cut off, the bored sea crab, which was spitting bubbles, suddenly hissed. Its 8 legs and 2 pincers spread open. Ding! Ding! The sound of the crab's legs colliding with the bronze platform attracted the attention of countless people. The people of the Heavenly Mist City had never seen such a ferocious sea crab before. They all cried out in surprise as they looked at the crab waving its pincers and hissing unceasingly. They were extremely excited. The hearts of the surrounding alchemists trembled, and they couldn't help but look over. When they saw such a ferocious creature, they sucked in a breath of cold air. Is this fellow here to make a fool of himself? How can this thing, which is covered in shells, be eaten? It's too disgusting. It's too scary. Even if you beat me to death, I won't eat such a thing. The audience was also frightened by the ferocious crab. Bufong was very calm. He had already expected that the crab, which had been freed from its shackles, would become ferocious for a while. The face of the chief judge darkened. The competition had just started, and this fellow already came up with such a thing. However, he couldn't say anything. After all, Bufong was only processing the ingredients, which was the same as an alchemist processing medicinal ingredients. He couldn't possibly stop someone else from processing medicinal ingredients. Thus, he could only continue to observe. The surrounding alchemists also let out a deep breath. They turned their heads and continued to concentrate on refining elixirs. Crack! Crack! That crab roared and glared at Bufong. It waved its huge pincers, and every time it waved, a clanging sound could be heard, which made people's hearts jump. Senior Brother Zhang took a deep breath, and his heart relaxed a lot. Fortunately, this time, it didn't seem like there were any problems. With his level, he should be able to advance to the next round. All of a sudden, a muffled sound rang out. Senior Brother Zhang's eyes shrank, and he felt the alchemic flame in his alchemy furnace jump. His heart trembled, and his tense spirit almost collapsed. What the F***ck happened this time? It wasn't just Senior Brother Zhang. All the other alchemists raised their heads, and they looked toward Bufong's position. When they saw what was happening, they were dumbfounded. Bufong naturally had his own way of dealing with crabs, especially this ferocious crab. Looking at the crab that was waving its pincers at him, Bufong's lips curled up. He raised the black turtle constellation wok and smashed it toward the crab. Boom! How heavy was the black turtle constellation wok? Bufong didn't know, but he felt that it was very heavy. When the wok smashed down, the crab didn't even have time to dodge, and it was smashed onto the bronze platform. The bronze platform shook, and the entire arena shook. Everyone, including the head judge, turned their heads to look at Bufong. It seemed that the wok didn't knock the crab out, and it actually shivered a little. With a thud, it tried to get up. Bufong furrowed his brows, and he waved the black turtle constellation wok again. Boom! 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 3 consecutive sounds rang out, and the bronze platform caved in. Every time the wok smashed, it made people's hearts tremble, and the hearts of the audience below the stage tightened. Puffed. The ones who wanted to vomit blood the most were the alchemists on the stage. Every time Bufong smashed the wok, their alchemic flames would jump, and they almost couldn't control their minds. Some alchemists had weak mental fortitude, and their wok directly exploded. Fortunately, there was only one person who was in an uproar. After the others calmed down, they wanted to cry, but no tears came out. How could they refine elixirs? He just knocked out a crab, and it was as if an earthquake was going to happen. The head judge exhaled deeply, and his face was a little dark. No wonder the previous judge cried and wanted to suspend Bufong. Meeting this kind of contestant who played with people's hearts was really a pain in the ass. Since the crab was knocked unconscious, Bufong was finally going to start his cooking. The golden dragon bone kitchen knife spun in his hand, and the beautiful knife, light almost blinded people's eyes. Pressing the crab's shell with one hand, Bufong didn't pry it open. Instead, he waved the golden dragon bone kitchen knife, and in an instant he chopped off each of the crab's legs. Grabbing only one crab leg, he turned the kitchen knife, and with a slash, the crab shell was peeled off. The shining white crab meat, which was almost transparent, was gouged out by Bufong. That series of movements were as smooth as flowing water, and the audience couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. After gouging out all the crab meat, Bufong took out a porcelain bowl and put all the crab meat together. Pouring oil into the wok, he opened his mouth and spat out the 10,000 bestial flame. The golden 10,000 bestial flame was like a small sun, and it caused the audience, who had seen it many times, to exclaim in admiration. As expected of a heaven and earth obsidian flame, it was really awesome. The head judge's face became even darker, using a heaven and earth obsidian flame to cook. Why didn't he meet this kid earlier? That way, he could have beaten this brat to death. The oil splashed everywhere, and Bufong poured the crab meat from the porcelain bowl into the wok. Sizzle, sizzle. The instant the crab meat entered the wok, the fragrance of the cooked crab meat rose up, and it soared into the sky. This fragrance wasn't any weaker than the aroma of the oyster bun. The head judge's face stiffened. The audience was once again dumbfounded. As for the alchemists on the stage, their hearts started to tremble again. However, the fragrance didn't last for too long. Bu Fong took out a steamer and scooped out the crab meat from the wok. Then he poured some Heaven Alps Spirit spring water into the oil that contained the crab meat. Taking out a steamer, he placed the giant sea crab inside and covered the lid of the steamer. In an instant, the fragrance was covered up, and the alchemists, whose hearts were already beating fast, heaved a sigh of relief. The alchemists, who were about to explode, were pulled back from the brink of exploding. What the F***CK? This alchemy refines one's heartbeat. The head judge looked at the calm and collected Bu Fong, and he felt that something was wrong. He had a bad premonition. Chapter 498. Why did the fragrance become so faint? This result caused everyone to be somewhat surprised. The rich aroma from earlier had already whetted the appetite of many people. However, the sudden disappearance of the aroma caused many people to be unable to adapt to it. The judge, who was below the stage, had tears streaming down his face. He felt that Bu Fong was jealous of his handsomeness, and that was why he kept targeting him. Why did he always stir up trouble when he was the judge? The stench and the fragrance took turns. However, when the chief judge stepped onto the stage, this fellow became terrified. Don't be terrified. Continue stirring up trouble. Although the chief judge felt that something was amiss, when he smelled the fragrance in the air, the tension in his heart loosened. As long as that brat didn't stir up trouble, everything would be fine. The alchemists heaved a sigh of relief. They looked at Bu Fong, who had calmed down and was calmly pressing his hand on the steamer. He was waiting for the dish to be steamed. All of them felt more at ease. This time, he should be able to refine elixirs properly. The audience felt that it was a pity that there was no show to watch. There were people who wanted to watch a good show and hoped that their furnaces would explode once again. However, it was a pity that Bu Fong was terrified. After all, he was the chief judge and he was quite powerful. Without Bu Fong's influence, the alchemists started to concentrate on refining elixirs. The fragrance of elixirs started to waft around the stage. Next, it was time for the alchemists to perform. Boom! Boom! The alchemic fire engulfed the stage, and it seemed as though it had turned into a fire snake that was spitting out alchemic energy. It spiraled around the stage, and heat waves surged. It was extremely cool. This fire control technique was displayed by an alchemist from Heavenly Shine City, and it caused the entire audience to cry out in surprise. Senior Brother Zhang of Heavenly Pill City was also stirred up. He let out a loud roar, and his alchemy flame seemed to turn into bolts of lightning that poured down from the sky. With a loud rumble, it smashed on the medicinal liquid that was continuously merging in the void. Sizzle! Lightning arcs flickered within the medicinal liquid, and it seemed as though there were small snakes slithering around. It was extremely cool. Wow! It's the Heavenly Pill City's Pill Tower's Heavenly Lightning Tempering Technique. The Heavenly Shine City's Snake Fire Alchemy Technique is also very cool, as expected of the talented alchemists. This is true alchemy. It's too awesome. At this moment, the audience below the stage were attracted by the dazzling alchemy skills on the stage, and they all let out exclamations of surprise. However, because of Bu Fong's indifference, the audience felt that it was a little boring, and many of them who were watching the show dispersed. I wonder who will succeed in condensing the elixir. This is actually kind of competition for them. The audience let out exclamations of surprise one after another, praising endlessly. Competitions between alchemists were very common. The most exciting thing was to see who could finish refining first. Moreover, the quality of the elixir would be higher than the other alchemists. At this moment, Everyone's attention was attracted by the scene of condensing a spirit elixir. No one was interested in Bu Fong anymore. However, the judge, who had been tricked twice, still stared at Bu Fong. His resentment was really big. Suddenly, the judge was shocked again. He discovered that Bu Fong had started cooking again. He activated the 10,000 bestial flames and poured the sauce and crab meat into the wok. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. The aroma emitted by the stir-frying spread throughout the entire place. The aroma was very fragrant. However, compared to the aroma of the oyster pancake, it was just a small fry. It didn't affect the alchemists at all. The audience was even more certain that Bu Fong had exhausted his limited abilities. He couldn't continue acting cool. Many alchemists smelled the aroma, but their hearts didn't waver. They even sneered coldly. After all, he was just an opportunistic chef. However, the only person who knew what Bu Fong was going to do was the judge. After shaking the wok for a while, the heat waves surged. The red crab meat, which had been stir-fried, was still trembling. Bu Fong scooped it out and poured it on top of the red steamed crab. Sizzle, sizzle. Steam filled the air, accompanied by a series of sizzling sounds. Bu Fong was very calm. With a flick of his finger, the dragon bone kitchen knife appeared in his hand. With a slight force, the kitchen knife made a dazzling display. Bu Fong focused all of his attention on the crab. Two of his fingers pressed on the crab's lid, and the dragon bone kitchen knife pointed at the opening. Instantly, a cracking sound rang out. That clear and melodious sound didn't attract much attention. However, as Bu Fong opened the crab's lid, steam rose up and a rich aroma spread out. That aroma swept across the entire place like a storm. The head judge was stunned. All of the audience members were stunned as well. On the bronze platform, where Bu Fong was standing, a dazzling light shot up into the sky. In an instant, it attracted everyone's attention. That dish could King emit light? Bang, 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 bang. The chief judge's heart suddenly trembled, and his entire body was covered in cold sweat. In an instant, a series of deafening explosions rang out in the arena, accompanied by cries of annoyance and anger. The audience was stunned. Everyone was shocked, and they sucked in a breath of cold air. Who the CK said that Bu Fong wouldn't cause trouble. When the aroma, which had been brewing for a long time, was released, the furnaces in the entire place exploded. Chapter 499. The chief judge was dumbfounded, and he stood rooted to the ground. He was a little dazed. The audience was also shocked. They didn't know what happened, and their faces were filled with confusion. What happened just now? Why did all the alchemists' furnaces explode in an instant? Didn't they say that they had to perfectly refine the elixir? What was going on? Someone sucked in a breath of cold air. As if he had thought of something, he turned his head and looked at Bu Fong's position. Indeed, he saw the dish that was placed on the bronze platform, and it seemed to be emitting a dazzling light. A dish that emitted light. So magical. It was indeed Bu Fong's doing. Everyone exclaimed in surprise. They thought that Bu Fong would be defeated in this round. However, no one would have thought that he would actually cook a dish that emitted a heaven-piercing fragrance at the last moment. The fragrance permeated the entire arena. It was hazy, and it was like a cloud of mist. People couldn't help but squint their eyes and take a deep breath of it. To be honest, this fragrance was really fragrant. It was even more fragrant than the oyster pancake from the day before. Moreover, it also had the smell of the sea. This smell was really intoxicating. For people who lived inland, this kind of smell of the sea was really too tempting. After the chief judge recovered from his shock, his whole body trembled. He was so angry that he reached the extreme. It actually happened. This kind of unbelievable thing actually happened in front of his eyes. Unforgivable. Wasn't there no smell before? Why did it suddenly emit such an intense smell? This guy, he definitely did it on purpose. He didn't expect this chef to be so scheming. Previously, when everyone was prepared, this guy didn't emit any fragrance. When everyone was relaxed and unprepared, he exploded his fragrance, causing all the alchemists' furnaces to explode. He really was a scheming chef. Bang, Bang! The sound of furnaces exploding on the arena resounded unceasingly. Flames shot up to the sky. That cool scene caused many of the audience to exclaim in surprise. They couldn't help but become excited. To be able to see such a spectacular scene of furnaces exploding, it was really rare. At this moment, the entire central square seemed to be attracted by the scene here. The entire arena was exploding. This scene was too dazzling. How could it not attract the attention of others? Senior Brother Zhang's face was flushed red from holding in his breath. The pill fire that had turned into lightning roared and surged as it bombarded the elixir that was about to take shape. At this moment, a fragrant aroma drifted over and rushed into his nostrils, instantly burrowing into his nostrils. What is this smell? Why does it smell so good? Is that the smell of the ocean? One wave after another. Senior Brother Zhang had the illusion of closing his eyes involuntarily, feeling as if he was experiencing the caress of the waves in the sea. That feeling was too wonderful. Beautiful my ass. Senior Brother Zhang's heart skipped a beat as his eyes widened with bloodshot veins. The scene of the waves disappearing one by one was replaced by the scene of lightning crashing down. The continuous sounds of furnaces exploding around him caused his heart to tremble. It was too terrifying. It was simply too terrifying. It was no wonder that Junior Brother Liu was eliminated. The effect of this fragrance was simply fatal to an alchemist. His mind was disturbed and became chaotic. It was difficult for him to control his alchemy fire. The violent alchemy fire instantly erupted and directly blew up his furnace. Pucci. In the distance, the alchemist from Heavenly Shine City was also bitterly holding on. He forcefully spat out a mouthful of blood and poured it into the alchemy fire, stabilizing the violent alchemy fire. The furnace exploded. My furnace actually exploded. I knew it. The furnace was going to explode. Why did I encounter such a fellow? So infuriating. Why is it so fragrant? Why is it so fragrant? On the arena, the alchemists who had their furnaces exploding were incomparably vexed. Some of them grabbed their heads and messed up their brains. Their eyes were bloodshot, and some of them were as violent as thunder. They fiercely stomped on the scattered furnace scraps. There were hundreds of different expressions. Bufang was indifferent to this. He took a deep breath, and the aroma of the sea crab immediately entered his body, causing his entire body and mind to relax. As expected of an 8th grade ingredient, when it was cooked, the aroma was simply too fragrant. The audience below the arena was so excited that they found it hard to breathe. This was especially so for the judge who had been tricked by Bufang twice. He was so excited that he almost jumped up from the ground. He even wanted to climb up the arena and give Bufang a kiss. Looking at the head judge's dark and gloomy face, he felt as if he had released a fart that had been stuck for a long time. I already said that it wasn't my problem. This kid is a freak. Whoever meets him will be unlucky. The judge laughed excitedly in his heart. Did you guys see the scene of the furnaces exploding just now? That loud explosion and the scene of flames soaring into the sky was simply too cool. This is the first time I've seen such a spectacular scene. In an instant, all the alchemists' furnaces exploded at the same time. Could it be that chefs are the nemesis of alchemists? No wonder there are no chefs in Pill City. Is it because they were all killed? The audience excitedly whispered to each other. At this moment, the head judge's heart was bleeding. He scanned the entire arena, and his heart sank. Almost all the alchemists in the arena had exploded at the last moment. Only 2 alchemists were left to continue refining elixirs. One of them was a genius from Heavenly Pill City, and the other was a genius from Heavenly Shine City. This was also within his expectations. If these 2 alchemists had failed, he would have been so depressed that he would have vomited blood. Buzz! A wave of energy swept through the entire arena. Senior Brother Zhang let out a long whistle. He had finally finished refining his elixir. A blurry line appeared on the surface of the elixir. It was obvious that he had successfully refined a 1-mark spirit elixir. Although the line was extremely blurry, it was at least completed. The alchemist from Heavenly Shine City had also finished refining his elixir. His face was extremely dispirited, and there were dark circles under his eyes. It was a sign that he had overexerted his energy. The head judge's heart finally relaxed. 2 one-mark spirit elixirs. It seemed like 3 people would be able to advance to the next round. This time, he did not test Bufang's dish first. Instead, he went in front of Senior Brother Zhang and the alchemist from Heavenly Shine City. He wanted to test the elixirs of these 2 alchemists. The final result did not disappoint him. Although they were affected by the aroma of Bufang's dish at the last stage, and their furnaces almost exploded, they were still genius alchemists. They were able to salvage the situation and form the elixir. After all, it was a one-mark spirit elixir. Therefore, these 2 alchemists had really advanced to the next round. At this moment, the head judge heaved a sigh of relief. He looked at Bufang, or rather, the dish that Bufang had placed on the table. It was a big red crab that had been steamed for a long time. The crab shell had been peeled off, and the hot, fragrant juices had been poured over it. It looked extremely enchanting. The white crab meat and the orange crab butter were so distinct, and it emitted a rich fragrance. It was so tempting. The head judge could not help but admit that this scene was too alluring. In addition to the fragrance, he could not control himself. Walking in front of Bufang, the head judge looked at Bufang. "This is your dish for this round? What is it called?" "Steamed deep-sea crab," Bufang calmly replied. "Steamed crab?" The head judge took a deep breath. The aroma of the crab rushed into his nostrils, and he could not help but swallow his saliva. It was so F***king fragrant. How could a steamed thing be so fragrant? As if realizing that he had lost control of himself, the head judge lightly coughed. Then he took out a yellow jade talisman and activated it. In an instant, a magic array enveloped the steamed deep-sea crab. But a slight fluctuation spread out, and the magic array suddenly lit up with a resplendent light. Then, the light started to circulate and become more and more intense. As expected, the spirit energy in this dish is too rich. It even exceeds that of a 9th-grade elixir. It is simply unbelievable. Looking at the magic array's reaction, the head judge's pupils shrank. It turned out that what the previous judge had said was the truth. This chef, he was really not an ordinary chef. His culinary skills were simply supernatural. Senior Brother Zhang and the Heavenly Shine City's alchemist's pupils shrank, and they sucked in a breath of cold air in disbelief. The spirit energy in this dish was actually not any weaker than the one-mark spirit elixirs they had refined. Was this a joke? You can try it. You will only know the effects after you taste it. Bufang said expressionlessly as he looked at the dumbfounded head judge. The head judge finally came back to his senses. He glanced at Bufang and took a pair of chopsticks. His hand that was holding onto the chopsticks trembled slightly. How many years had it been since he had eaten such a dish? Ever since the appearance of the fasting pill, he had not touched any other dishes. He did not expect that he would be able to eat such a fragrant dish today. He felt a little excited in his heart. The crab meat was covered with a steaming hot sauce, and there were a few pieces of crab meat on top of it. It was quite cute. The head judge inserted his chopsticks into the crab meat and easily peeled off the shell. Perhaps it was because of Bufang's control of the heat, but the crab shell became extremely soft. It did not take much effort for the crab meat to be peeled off. When the crab shell was peeled off, steam billowed out. Between the white and tender crab meat, there seemed to be sparkling and translucent water vapor condensing. It was quite cute. The head judge picked up a piece of the white and tender crab meat and dipped it into the sauce that Bufang had poured on it. The fragrance was so rich that everyone could not help but swallow their saliva. The audience below the stage stretched their necks and looked at the head judge who was stuffing the crab meat into his mouth. The audience opened their mouths wide, and some of them licked their lips. Their saliva was flying everywhere. Did it have to be so tempting? The audience felt bitter in their hearts. They could only watch but not eat. It was an indescribable sorrow. Yu's eyes were glued to the crab meat. Her long black hair fluttered in the wind, and her sparkling feet touched the ground. She floated onto the stage and arrived beside Bufang. "You can't eat this. This is a contestant's work." Bu Fong was shocked. Why did this woman come up to the stage? At this moment, the head judge was completely captivated. The soft and fragrant crab meat burst forth in his mouth. The fragrance was like a dragon that drilled into every part of his mouth. His taste buds were enticed, and his breathing became more intense. After a mouthful of crab meat, the rich flavor of the sea made him feel as if he was in the middle of the sea. The waves were rushing into the sky, and the hazy water vapor was washing over his body. He felt as if his body had become extremely strong, and his muscles were all tensed up. It was just a mouthful of crab meat, but his muscles had increased the strength of his body. Not to mention the taste, just the effect of the crab meat was extraordinary. It was simply godly. A loud thud resounded. While the head judge was still intoxicated by the delicacy, Bu Fong took out his signboard and smashed it on the bronze platform. He started his daily advertisement. While he was advertising, Yu, who was beside him, opened her mouth wide and took a bite of the crab meat. Coupled with the scene of Bu Fong advertising, the temptation increased exponentially. Chapter 500. Advertisement, another advertisement. The audience below the stage was speechless. Every time this chef finished cooking, he would advertise his cloud mist restaurant. At this moment, everyone was somewhat suspicious. Did this guy participate in a magical hand conference just to advertise himself? Yu was eating happily, and her mouth was covered in grease. The fact that a beauty like her was eating without restraint caused the audience below to exclaim in surprise. It was a feast for the eyes and a feast for the eyes. When the chief judge came back to his senses, his eyes widened, and he glared at Yu with a face full of displeasure. Why is this woman on the stage? We are in the middle of a competition. How can an outsider like her come here? The chief judge coldly said. He smacked his lips and looked at Yu, who was eating crab meat in big mouthfuls. His heart ached for her. When the guards below the stage heard the chief judge's angry roar, they immediately rushed up and surrounded Yu. The chief judge was furious. He had only eaten a mouthful of the delicious steamed crab, but this woman had already snatched it away. He had never seen such a shameless woman before. Suddenly, the chief judge saw a crab shell beside the plate. The shell was red, and it was filled with crab meat. It was emitting a fragrant aroma. He picked up the crab shell and used his chopsticks to scoop out the crab meat. She's a waiter from the Cloud Mist restaurant. Bu Fong explained. Even though he had a headache over the appearance of this woman, he still had to explain what needed to be explained. He wasn't afraid of what these people would do to you. Instead, he was worried about what you would do to these people. You were the Netherworld woman. He didn't know how strong she was, but he knew that she was definitely powerful. The reason he participated in the Magical Hand Conference was to advertise his Cloud Mist restaurant, not to cause trouble. His goal was simple. If the alchemists knew what Bu Fong was thinking, they would want to drown him with their saliva. Ever since he started participating in the Magical Hand Conference, he had caused a lot of trouble. His goal was simple. He was definitely the most scheming chef in history. Chief Judge, what do you think? When the guard heard Bu Fong's words, he was in a difficult position. He looked at the chief judge awkwardly. However, at this moment, the chief judge was eating happily. The corner of his mouth was stained with orange-yellow crab paste. He looked like a glutton, which made the guard speechless. Forget it, let's disperse. The guard's face was filled with despair. Smelling the fragrance at such a close distance, he almost couldn't control himself. What the hell? Is this chief judge here to joke around? Hence, under the speechless gazes of the audience, the guards who had rushed to the ring with great momentum dispersed one after another. The chief judge licked the shell of the crab. The delicious taste was still lingering in his mind. It's really delicious, the head judge sighed in admiration. This was the first time he had eaten such a delicious dish. That feeling was simply indescribable. The fasting pill was nothing compared to the dishes. Comparing the two, the fasting pill tasted as bad as shit. The chief judge raised his head. His heart ached because you had already finished eating the crab. She was holding onto a large pincer and was gnawing on it. This woman's eating manner was extremely terrifying. She bit down on the crab shell and swallowed it without spitting it out. Was her stomach made of iron? Chief Judge, did I advance to the next round? Bufong looked at the Chief Judge, who was staring at you with deep hatred. You bit down on the large pincer and broke it. This caused everyone's heart to turn cold. The Chief Judge swallowed his saliva and looked at Bufong. He nodded his head and said, "You passed, you passed. There will be a third round of elimination later. As long as you pass this round, you will be able to advance to the semifinals. There's still another round of elimination?" Bufong furrowed his brows. However, he quickly relaxed his brows. Wasn't it just an elimination round? At most, he would just have to eat another steamed crab. After nodding his head, Bufong packed up the items on the bronze platform. He carried his signboard and slowly walked out of the arena. You bit down on another crab's pincer and broke it. Her slender legs strode forward and she followed behind Bufong. The fifth arena exploded again. Chef massacred the alchemists who competed with him. Only the alchemists from Heavenly Pill City and Heavenly Shine City advanced to the next round. The public enemy of the alchemists has shown his might again. He has suppressed everyone and is about to enter the final elimination round. The audience went crazy. After a long while, the news spread like wildfire. This caused the entire Central Plaza to boil. Duan Yun packed up his alchemy furnace. He had successfully advanced to the final round. He was a little happy because he was one step closer to his goal. As soon as he stepped out of the arena, the news swept through the plaza like a storm. He was startled. Did that chef show his might again? Senior brother Zhang advanced to the next round? That fearsome chef. He really gave off a familiar feeling. Duan Yin muttered to himself. He had met such a fearsome and ferocious chef before. That chef was the owner boo of the southern region. Now, another one had appeared in the Heavenly Mist City's Magical Hand Conference. He felt that these two chefs must have come from the same source. Could it be that there was a mysterious power hidden in the Hidden Dragon Continent? That power was formed by chefs? A chef who was comparable to an alchemist. It was simply unimaginable. When they returned to Heavenly Pill City's warship, the atmosphere inside the warship became extremely solemn. Senior Brother Zhang sat at the side with a solemn expression and sighed continuously. Senior Brother Zhang, did you advance to the next round? Duan Yun hurriedly asked. I did advance, but my heart just can't calm down. That chef gave me too much of an impact, he said. Senior Brother Zhang said in a daze. Strictly speaking, he had lost. He had lost to a chef. This was something that the arrogant Senior Brother Zhang found hard to accept. I really don't know what kind of dish he will serve in the last elimination round tomorrow. You didn't see the scene of everyone exploding their furnaces in the arena today. My little heart is about to jump out of my chest. Senior Brother Zhang said with a lingering fear. In the distance, Senior Brother Liu leaned against the deck of the warship. He was still in a daze. Duan Yin narrowed his eyes. He suddenly felt that this year's Magical Hand Conference would be different. Perhaps it was because of the chef's appearance. The Heavenly Pill City's warship wasn't the only one discussing Bufong's matter. Almost all of the Pill City's powers were discussing it. A chef had used an unreasonable method to explode furnaces along the way. He had barged into their field of vision. This was a provocation to all of their alchemists. To the arrogant alchemists, this was something that they would never allow to happen. Thus, almost all of the alchemists became united against a common enemy. They wanted to destroy this chef. When Nangong Wuk and Nangong Wan heard the news, they were so shocked that they couldn't close their mouths. Damn it, Honorable was really awesome. They thought that he was going to be eliminated. They didn't expect that he would actually enter the third elimination round. Was he really going to make a comeback and enter the top 100? Nangong Wan was already eliminated. However, she didn't care about it. She knew her own level. Nangong Wuk successfully entered the third elimination round. Although he didn't have his heaven and earth obsidian flame, which affected his alchemy skills, he was still Nangong Wuk. It was easy for him to pass the elimination round. When Yang Meiji found out that a chef had entered the third round of elimination, she was stunned for a while. Suddenly, she thought that chef couldn't be Bufong. Could he? There was only one chef in the entire Heavenly Mist City. Besides Bufong, who else could it be? Was he trying to defy the heavens? He had actually entered the third elimination round. When young Meiji thought of this question, she hurriedly returned to the Cloud Mist restaurant. She wanted to look for Bufong and ask him about it. However, before she could step out of the pill tower, her teacher, Master Shinbei, glared at her. She could only obediently continue to prepare the elixirs for the third elimination round. By the time Bufong returned to the store, the sky had already darkened. Two bright moons hung high in the sky, sprinkling down their cold radiance, covering the entire land with a layer of fine gauze. When Bufong closed the store's bronze gate, he was startled. He looked into the distance with a puzzled expression. There seemed to be a silhouette flashing by. The corners of Bufong's mouth curled up. He was too lazy to think too much about it. With a bang, he closed the gate and returned to the kitchen. Misha slowly appeared from the darkness. He stared at the store with a grave expression and took a deep breath. With that woman there, they didn't have any chance of snatching the Shura Tower. Could it be that they couldn't take back the ancient Shura city's holy artifact? It wasn't a good idea to continue like this. It was better to report to Lord Tong, and ask him to contact the ancient Shura city to send a true expert over. Otherwise, they could only look on helplessly. With this thought in mind, Misha's figure disappeared into the darkness. After Bufong returned to the store, he went to the kitchen and cooked a bowl of sweet and sour dragon ribs for Lord Go. He didn't cook any dragon blood rice for you. That woman actually ran to the stage to snatch food. She ate the competition's masterpiece. Now, she still wanted to eat dragon blood rice. If this continued, she would become as fat as Blackie. Thus, no matter how much the Netherworld woman glared at him, Bufong didn't cook any dragon blood rice. Lord Go was lying on the dining table. He looked at Yu, whose face had darkened, and laughed. Yu expressionlessly glanced at Lord Go. She squinted her eyes when she saw the fat on Lord Go's face. You little doll, don't snatch Lord Go's sweet and sour ribs. Woof. Bufong was practicing the Overlord 13 blades in the kitchen when he suddenly heard Lord Go's angry bark. After turning his head to look outside, Bufong continued practicing his knife skills. While practicing his knife skills, he was also thinking about the dish he would prepare for tomorrow's competition. Tomorrow was the third elimination round. This competition was extremely important, and there would be many people watching it. Thus, Bufong felt that he had to make a dish that would shock everyone. What kind of dish would shock everyone? This was a serious question. Bufong was in a daze as he held the golden dragon bone kitchen knife. I've already tried the fragrant and stinky ones. Tomorrow, I will try the spicy one. Chapter 501. A spicy dish. Bufong held the golden dragon bone kitchen knife and twirled it in his hands. Spiciness was actually an essential taste in delicacies. Many famous delicacies were inseparable from the word spicy. However, since he had already decided to cook a spicy dish the next day, Bufong had a headache about what he should cook. First of all, he had to choose a dish that would shock people's eyes. Moreover, the flavor of the dish had to be rich during the cooking process. Only by doing so would he be able to create a shocking effect that would be unforgettable to people. Only by cooking such a dish would he be able to promote the Cloud Mist restaurant. However, the system's temporary task was for him to promote the Cloud Mist restaurant, and participating in a magical hand conference was the best way to do so. However, how many rounds did he have to reach? Or was he supposed to become the champion? Bufong was stunned for a moment, then he shook his head. Forget it. He would just take one step at a time. If he managed to complete the temporary task, the system would naturally notify him. As he twirled the golden dragon bone kitchen knife, Bufong's aura suddenly changed. It was as though he had turned into an overlord, and his gaze was incomparably sharp. Xiaopi was lying on the stove with the golden dragon bone kitchen knife hovering above it. Xiaopi blinked its compound eyes and looked at Bufong with a puzzled expression. Fine. The corners of Bufong's mouth curled upwards, and he put away the golden dragon bone kitchen knife. He couldn't rush the Overlord 13 blades. Picking up Xiaopi, Bufong placed it on his shoulder and started pacing around the kitchen. He was thinking about the dish he would cook the next day. Suddenly, his eyes lit up and he waved his hands. He finally knew what dish he would cook. The next morning, Bufong woke up early and went to the kitchen. He cooked dishes for Blackie and you. The aroma of sweet and sour ribs and dragon blood rice permeated the entire store. After opening the store's doors, Bufong opened them for business for a while. Then, he closed the doors and left for the Heavenly Mist City's Central Plaza. Today was the last day of the elimination round, and the top 100 participants of the Magical Hand Conference will be chosen to participate in the semifinals. The semifinals and elimination rounds were very different. At that time, the pill pagodas of the 3 great pill cities of the pill prefecture would use projection arrays to transmit the images of the competition to the various big cities. At that time, the competition would be broadcasted to the entire pill prefecture. This was also the reason why the Magical Hand Conference was the most important event in the Pill Palace. It could even be said that many experts from the other first-rate factions of the Hidden Dragon continent would come to the Pill Palace to watch the competition. They paid attention to the top 50 alchemists in the Magical Hand Conference. Those alchemists were the true geniuses among alchemists. They had unlimited potential and were the main targets of the major factions. Therefore, the Magical Hand Conference was also a place for alchemists to make a name for themselves. Bufong continued to carry the board and walked towards the central square step by step. Along the way, many people recognized Bufong. After all, Bufong's reputation was not small. He was the only chef who made it to the 3rd round of the elimination round. He was the public enemy of all alchemists. As long as he participated in the competition, there would be furnace explosions. Now, when many alchemists mentioned Bufong's name, their bodies would tremble in fear. They were afraid that they would encounter Bufong, the bane of their existence, in the next round. However, Bufong did not care about this. After arriving at the central square, Bufong found out that the arena for his competition was the first arena. The first arena? So awesome! Since it was the first arena, did it mean that there would be many people watching? Now that Bufong wanted to promote the Cloud Mist restaurant, he was naturally overjoyed to be able to compete in the arena with the most spectators. However, the result made him a little speechless. The arena number for the elimination round had no practical significance. The first arena was no different from the other arenas. Although it was a pity, Bufong did not take it to heart. As time passed, the number of people in the central square increased, and it became more and more crowded. When it came to the 3rd round of the elimination round, there were already many people watching. Thus, almost every arena was surrounded by people. Bufong walked up to the first arena. The way he carried the signboard was very obvious. Many people knew that he was in the first arena, and they all came to watch. Compared to the competition between the alchemists, they felt that Bufong, the chef, was more interesting. Moreover, as long as the chef was in the arena, there would be many interesting things happening. For example, a furnace explosion. After so many competitions, Bufong's reputation in this Magical Hand Conference was not small. Although he had not attracted the attention of the top genius alchemists, he was an existence that was like a wolf or a tiger to ordinary alchemists. After all, this chef came in a menacing manner and was no small matter. The person in charge of the first arena's elimination round was the chief judge from yesterday. The chief judge looked deeply at Bufong and licked his lips. The taste of the steamed crab from yesterday was still lingering in his mind. He suddenly felt that being a judge for Bufong was not a bad thing. At the very least, he could taste a lot of delicious food. He wondered what kind of delicious food Bufong would cook for this round. He was really curious about it. Dong! Bufong placed the signboard on the bronze platform. All the alchemists in the arena looked at him with vigilance. It's him. This guy is the chef who caused the alchemist furnaces to explode. Every alchemist looked at Bufong with a cold gaze that was filled with killing intent. This time, they had to knock this chef off the stage. The head judge looked at Bufong, who seemed to have become the center of attention, with interest. Although he admired the taste of Bufong's dishes, if he could eliminate Bufong, it would not be a bad thing. After all, the Magical Hand Conference was a stage for alchemists. A chef who came in randomly would make people feel weird. If this chef got into the top 50, The Pill Palace would become the laughingstock of the entire Hidden Dragon continent. In a professional alchemist competition, a chef got into the top 50. Didn't that mean that alchemists couldn't even compete with a chef? This round is the third round of the elimination round. It is also the key to deciding whether or not you can get into the semifinals. To be able to get to this round, it means that your alchemy skills are very strong. However, no matter what, there must be a result in a duel. Some people will advance, while others will fail. Therefore, I hope that everyone can bring out your true skills in this elimination round. The rules of the competition are as follows. Within an hour, those who can refine a 9th grade elixir will advance. Remember, there are only 10 slots. The first to finish refining will advance. The chief judge said. All the alchemists became serious. The difficulty of the third round of the elimination round was naturally different from the previous rounds. Those who could get to this round were all capable alchemists. No one dared to underestimate anyone else. Bufang nodded his head seriously. The dish in this round was not a small challenge to him. Naturally, he had to be serious. When the chief judge announced the start of the competition, Bufang also moved. Swoosh! The sound of rain rang out. Then, the audience looked at Bufang's bronze platform in shock. There was a small hill of red chili peppers. The chili peppers were slightly curved and glossy. However, this was not the end. The sound of rain fell again, and a small hill of green chili peppers filled the bronze platform. The audience was stunned. What dish was this chef going to make this time? Ignoring the gazes of the audience, Bufang waved his hand, and the dragon bone kitchen knife started to spin. It seemed as though it was shining with a dazzling light. It was like a shooting star falling from the pitch-black sky. The audience below the stage let out cries of surprise. What was he doing? So many chili peppers. Was he going to ascend to the heavens? When the alchemists on the stage saw so many chili peppers, their faces turned black in an instant. Everyone's heart seemed to have a bad premonition. The chief judge was also a little dumbfounded. Chili peppers? Could it be that today's dish was related to chili peppers? But what was he going to do with so many chili peppers? Was he really going to ascend to the heavens? Clatter, 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 clatter. However, Bufang did not answer their questions. The rhythmic sound of the kitchen knife hitting the chopping board reverberated in everyone's ears. It was incomparably clear. The dragonbone kitchen knife seemed to have disappeared. The frequency at which it was swung caused everyone to suck in a breath of cold air. This hand speed was heaven-defying. This knife skill was simply godly. Clatter, clatter, clatter. The small hill of chili peppers was quickly cut into pieces by Bufang and scattered all over the plate. Red and green chili peppers were piled up on one side. At this moment, the other alchemists retracted their gazes and started to refine elixirs seriously. This time, many of the alchemists had learned their lesson. They closed their nostrils and only used their mouths to breathe weakly. This way, they would not be affected by the fragrance. This was the strategy that these alchemists had come up with to deal with their enemies. Today, Bufang was their enemy. They were very confident in this method. The nose was very sensitive, especially for alchemists. It was precisely because of this sensitivity that their reactions to fragrance were especially intense. They were especially easily affected by it. If they chose to close their nostrils and use their mouths to breathe, the effects would be suppressed to the minimum. Naturally, the furnace would not explode because of the fragrance. This time, all of them came in a threatening manner. They were determined to eliminate Bufang from the Magical Hand Conference. Boom! The alchemic fire surged, and the stage became hot in an instant. All kinds of spirit herbs rushed out, and their medicinal energy filled the air. They fell into the alchemic furnace and were burned into medicinal liquid. Bufang naturally did not know the state of those alchemists. After chopping up the chili peppers, he mixed them together and put them aside. He added some seasoning and marinated them for a while. Taking advantage of this time, Bufang took out a huge object from the system's dimensional storage. Boom! A huge fat fish the size of a human was caught by Bufang and smashed onto the bronze platform, causing the entire stage to tremble. The referee was stunned, and so were the spectators below the stage. This chef, what was he going to do? Yesterday, he was going to cook a crab. Was he going to cook a fish today? Was he going to cook a seafood feast? That fat fish was plump and plump. With one look, one could tell that it was very meaty. It would definitely be delicious after being cooked. However, what Buffon did next gave them a fright. They saw Buffon carrying the dragon bone kitchen knife and infusing his true energy into it. The dragon bone kitchen knife emitted a dazzling radiance and became huge. Poochie! With a slash of the knife, the fish's head and body were instantly separated. Under everyone's dumbfounded gazes, Buffon kept the plump fish's body, leaving behind only the huge fish head. Leaving behind a fish head that did not have much meat? What was this guy trying to do? Everyone was dumbfounded. Chapter 502. The audience stared at the arena with their mouths agape. They were somewhat speechless and puzzled. That was because Buffon's actions were really stupid. He didn't want such a juicy fish, but he left behind a hideous fish head. What was so delicious about a fish head? It didn't look good at all. How could a fish head compare to the white and tender fish meat? This was completely putting the cart before the horse. Did this chef become stupid from cooking? The chief judge was also a little puzzled, but he didn't say anything. He just looked at Buffon with a playful expression. He couldn't wait for Buffon to make a mistake. Why would he bother to remind him? In his opinion, it would be best if this chef was eliminated in this round of elimination. That way, there wouldn't be so many messy things in the next round of the competition. The alchemists also sneered. They felt that this time, Buffon must have really exhausted his limited abilities. He even used the wrong ingredient. What kind of delicious dish was he going to make? However, they didn't let down their guard. They still sealed their noses and didn't smell anything. That way, they wouldn't be distracted by the aroma. Buffon naturally didn't know that his action of leaving the fish head behind would cause so many people to have such an inconceivable thought. Of course, even if he knew, he wouldn't care. The golden dragon bone kitchen knife became extremely resplendent. It was as though it was made of gold, and there was even a faint dragon aura emitting from the kitchen knife. At this moment, the audience finally noticed the kitchen knife in Buffon's hand. It turned out that this kitchen knife wasn't an ordinary kitchen knife. That pressure, that aura, it seemed to be even more awesome than a half-step divine tool. Using a heaven and earth obsidian flame to heat a wok and a half-step divine tool as a kitchen knife. This chef really wanted to ascend to the heavens. This fellow was so extravagant that it made people's hair stand on end. The dragon bone kitchen knife spun and scraped off the scales on the giant fish head. Finally, the kitchen knife slashed down and the fish head was split into two. However, in the end, it didn't cut off and the fish head was left lying on ground. After washing the fish head with the Heaven Alps Spirit Spring water, Buffon began to deal with the fish head seriously. He took out a lot of elixirs from the system's dimensional bag, minced them, squeezed out the juice, and smeared it on the fish's head. Then, he kneaded the fish's head with a special method so that the liquid would seep into the fish's head. He sprinkled the seasoning into a large basin, which contained the marinating fish head. While waiting for the fish head to marinate, Buffon took out the chopped peppers and stirred them. A rich, spicy aroma wafted out. Buffon wrinkled his nose and squinted at the spicy smell. The surrounding alchemists were all tensed up. This was the last round of the elimination round, and none of them dared to relax. They were all trying their best to refine the pill. At this time, they were not in the mood to pay attention to Buffon's cooking. He took out the black turtle constellation wok and smashed it onto the bronze platform. The 10,000 bestial flames gushed out, emitting a scorching hot air. It was resplendent and dazzling. However, this dazzling heaven and earth obsidian flame was being recklessly used to cook. Every time the chief judge saw this scene, he was so angry that he almost vomited blood. He wanted to rush forward and slap Buffon, this wastrel, until he was stunned. If the heaven and earth obsidian flame is given to an alchemist, there is hope that he can cultivate a four clouds alchemist. The chief judge looked at the 10,000 bestial flames with bloodshot eyes. Inside the black turtle constellation wok, Fong poured in the Heaven Alps Spirit spring water. He also added a lot of elixir essences. The grades of these elixirs were not considered high. Most of them were at the 5th or 6th level. However, because they were the essence of elixirs, the moment they entered the wok, a surging spiritual energy surged out. When the soup in the wok started boiling, Fong began his next step. He took out a huge steamer, which was just enough to cover the fish head. He placed the marinated fish head into the steamer and placed the chopped peppers on top of it. The red and green peppers were extremely beautiful and eye-catching. Is he really going to make a fish head? Fish head, can it be eaten? Moreover, there's so many peppers on it. Is this a dark cuisine? It looks too scary. Even if you beat me to death, I will not eat it. The audience below the stage started whispering to each other. They felt that the dish that Fong was cooking was too strange. Not only was he cooking a fish head, but he also added so many peppers on it. It covered the entire fish head. Could this thing be eaten? Wouldn't it be too spicy? However, what Fong needed was spiciness. The theme of his dish was spicy. When the chief judge saw Fong take out the steamer, he refused to do so. Now, whenever he saw a steamer, he would feel a little afraid. When Fong steamed the crab yesterday, he used a steamer. Previously, there was no fragrance. Just like today, could it be that the intoxicating aroma would erupt again? Rumble, steam rose from the wok and water vapor continuously gushed out from the bottom of the wok, covering the steamer. Fong's palm was suspended in front of the steamer. The spiritual energy that rose from the bottom of the wok was controlled by him and poured into the steamer. This technique was extraordinary. The chief judge's eyes lit up and he exclaimed in his heart. This was because he could feel that Fong's mental energy was fluctuating violently. It was obviously not easy to cook such a heaven-defying dish. As time passed, the audience felt that it was getting more and more boring. Although Fong's cooking movements were pleasing to the eye, it was not exciting at all. They wanted to see the furnace explode. What happened to the furnace exploding? If the alchemists on the stage knew what the audience was thinking, they would definitely be so depressed that they wanted to vomit blood. After a long time, the audience below the stage finally became excited. This was because they realized that Fong had moved. He lowered his palm that was suspended in front of the steamer and let out a light breath. He took out the steamer from the wok and placed it on the bronze platform. Was it going to be revealed? They were looking forward to the scene of the lid being revealed. They wanted to see what this chef could do with just a fish head. However, to their surprise, Fong did not reveal the lid. Instead, he took out a huge crystal jar from the system's dimensional storage. After cleaning the Black Turtle Constellation wok, Fong poured some oil into the wok. When he opened the lid of the abyssal chili sauce, a wave of surging spiciness surged out. The sourness made the corners of Fong's mouth twitch. He scooped up half a ladle of chili sauce and poured it into the wok. Fong thought for a while and scooped up another half a ladle. Since his theme today was spicy, he might as well go all out. After all, he was not the one eating. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. Once the chili sauce entered the wok, it instantly splashed. Fong stir-fried the chili sauce in the wok, and the surging spiciness instantly surged out. The smoke that floated up was a little red. As the breeze blew, the spicy smell immediately drifted around the arena. Sizzle, sizzle. The moment the chief judge saw the red smoke, he was instantly shocked. This chef was really godly. He could even make smoke have a color. Could it be another fragrance? The spiciness drifted over, and with his trust in Fong, the chief judge took a deep breath. This mouthful, the chief judge himself was dumbfounded. The smell that floated into his nose caused his eyes to widen. In an instant, his nostrils became hot, and his whole nose instantly turned red. What is this smell? The chief judge raised his head, and his eyes were wide open. His eyes were bloodshot, and his face was turning red at a speed visible to the naked eye. Tap, tap, tap. The chief judge continuously retreated a few steps. He covered his nose and howled miserably. He felt as though his nose did not belong to him anymore. That kind of burning sensation was simply like a fire roasting his nose. It was simply too painful. Sizzle, sizzle. Bufong stir-fried for a while, and his face was calm. Although the smell was incomparably strong, Bufong was prepared in advance, so he was not affected by it. He looked at the chief judge, who was about to tear his clothes apart in astonishment. What was wrong with this person? The spiciness continued to spread. Many of the audience members were also dumbfounded. They opened their nostrils and prepared to take a whiff of the fragrance coming from the steamer. What the hell was this smell that suddenly invaded their nostrils? Moreover, why was this smell so strong? The audience members' nostrils instantly shrank, and their faces turned red. Their eyes were bloodshot. At this moment, they finally understood why the chief judge was howling miserably. This kind of feeling, it was so good. It was so good that it made people want to cry. Cough, cough, cough. This smell. This chef is going to murder us. Spicy. It's too spicy. This smell. It's going to kill me. I trusted him so much, but he actually let me smell this. I want to smash his chest open. The audience members were so angry that they started coughing nonstop. Their eyes were red from the spiciness. Some of them even started to cry. She was crying her eyes out. It was too unbearable. They were choking on the spiciness. Was this the so-called retribution for watching a good show? The chief judge cried. He covered his nose and squatted there, crying as if he had nothing left to live for. Bean-sized tears streamed down his face. In fact, the ones who were suffering the most weren't the chief judge or the audience members. It was the alchemists who were refining the elixirs. They all held their breaths and used their mouths to breathe. When the spiciness wafted over and entered their mouths, all of their eyes widened. They felt as if a ball of fire had entered their mouths. Their mental energy fluctuated, and they coughed while refining elixirs. They had to control their furnaces so that they wouldn't explode. Bang, bang. However, the intermittent sounds of furnaces exploding rang out, and the arena was once again engulfed in flames. However, this time, none of the audience members were in the mood to watch a good show. At this moment, they finally understood the resentment in the hearts of the alchemists who exploded their furnaces. They really wanted to cut that chef into 8 pieces. Bufong shook his spatula and scooped up a spoonful of the melted abyssal chili sauce. He looked at the crying audience members and the chief judge with a puzzled expression. These people were moved to tears by this chef's exquisite culinary skills, then continued to cry. With one hand holding the spatula, Bufong used the other hand to open the steamer. Sizzle, white steam filled the air. In the next instant, waves of heat shot up into the sky like a mushroom cloud. Bufong's eyes were sharp, and he expressionlessly waved his spatula. In an instant, the boiling hot abyssal chili sauce was poured onto the fish head that was covered with chili peppers. Buzz! It was as if a formless wave of energy was spreading out. The light emitted from the steamer became much more resplendent, and an even more pungent and rich spicy aroma swept the entire arena like a storm. Gurgle, gurgle. On the porcelain plate, the giant fish head was covered with red and green chili peppers. The abyssal chili sauce that was poured onto it was incomparably hot, causing the fish to tremble. A wave of spicy aroma instantly spread out. It was so beautiful that it was like a blooming flower, emitting a bright radiance. Bufong placed the spatula back into the wok, and he let out a light breath. He narrowed his eyes in satisfaction. Steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers done. Chapter 503. Spicy fish head with diced hot red peppers. It was fragrant and spicy, and the rich aroma wafted through the air. The fish head was covered with a thick layer of red and green chili, and there was even abyssal chili sauce poured over it. It had a unique flavor. There was a hint of redness and spiciness in the aroma that wafted through the air. Bufong was very satisfied with this dish. The fish meat was emitting a glossy luster, and there was spirit energy flowing within it. This meant that he had a good grasp of the heat. The essence of those spirit herbs had all successfully seeped into the fish meat. However, the alchemists on the stage hated this dish to the core. As the steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers was completed, the air was filled with a rich aroma that was mixed with a bone-chilling spiciness. The spicy smell lingered and enveloped the surroundings of the alchemists. These alchemists had sealed their sense of smell, so they could not smell the fragrance. However, their mouths were not sealed. They had to use their mouths to breathe. As they opened their mouths and inhaled, the spicy taste unknowingly drilled into their throats. The spicy taste in their mouths caused the hearts of those alchemists who insisted on not letting their alchemy furnaces explode to tremble. What the hell? What was that guy cooking? Their tongues instantly felt numb, and the burning sensation made them feel as if they were in a sea of fire. Bang! Bang! The sounds of cauldrons exploding resounded once again. This time, it was even more thorough. The sounds of cauldrons exploding were endless. Almost all the alchemist cauldrons would explode if they were not careful. They didn't want their furnaces to explode, but the heat in their mouths made it impossible for them to concentrate on condensing the pills. Their eyes were red and bean-sized teardrops flowed down freely, falling to the ground with a plop. The sorrow in their hearts made it hard for them to breathe. Failure. They really failed. The title of the public enemy of the apothecaries. Indeed, it was not a joke. This spiciness, it was practically ascending to the heavens. The chief judge cried like a child. When the smell of the steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers spread out, he cried even harder. Towards this spicy taste, he rejected it in his heart. He also sealed his sense of smell like those alchemists, but the spicy taste drilled into his mouth and floated past his eyes. Tears streamed down her cheeks again. Why was life so difficult? He didn't want to cry, but he couldn't stop the tears from flowing. For a moment, the scene in Arena Number 1 caused everyone to be dumbfounded. The audience below was blinking their eyes, and large beads of tears rolled down their cheeks. The alchemists on the stage were crying as their furnaces exploded. The head judge lay on the ground and cried until he couldn't breathe. What was going on? With such a huge commotion, how could it not attract the attention of others? The spectators in the other arenas subconsciously turned their heads to look in this direction. They seemed to be a little puzzled as to what was happening. However, when they saw this scene, their expressions became extremely strange. The alchemists were crying, the audience was crying. Even the judge, who was usually expressionless, was crying. Could it be that something sad had happened? As a result, the curious spectators rushed to Arena Number 1. Some of the audience members backed out. Some of the audience members squeezed their way in. And so, those who had squeezed their way in also cried. That spicy smell made them feel as if their noses didn't belong to them anymore. It was as if they had been punched by a fist. It was unbearably hot. Her eyes were stung and tears kept flowing. They finally knew why the spectators were crying. It turned out that the culprit was that chef. The chef who was known as the public enemy of alchemists. This spicy smell was simply too terrifying. They had never smelled such a smell before. It was a smell that could make one go to heaven. After a long time, the head judge crawled up from the ground. His eyes were swollen and bloodshot, and his nose was red. It was as if he was drunk. His lips were red and swollen, and they were boiling hot. Wiping away his tears, the head judge wanted to strangle Bufong to death. How dare this guy release poison in public? More importantly, he didn't even warn him before releasing the poison. He trusted Bufong so much and felt that the things he cooked would definitely be fragrant. In the end, he came up with such a thing. It was so spicy that he had no friends. What kind of chili was that? How could it be so spicy? Under the assault of the spicy smell, all the alchemists in the arena exploded their furnaces. This time, the explosion was really thorough. These alchemists' tears flowed nonstop, and all of their lips were red and swollen. The sadness in their hearts made it hard for them to breathe. The light gradually dimmed, and the meat of the steamed fish head with chopped hot red peppers moved slightly. The head judge looked at Bufong hatefully and walked in front of him. He knew that this elimination round was F***ing messed up again. Moreover, it was even more miserable. Yesterday, there were 3 people who advanced to the next round, but today, there would only be one person left. Moreover, that person was the culprit behind all of this. He was a chef. A bunch of alchemists were defeated by a chef. What a disgrace. Do you know that you are holding onto the rope? The head judge's mouth was swollen, and his voice was indistinct. His heart was tired from speaking so much. He was filled with hatred. Why didn't he guard against Bufong? What did you say? Speak clearly. Bufong was stunned. He furrowed his brows and asked. The head judge's eyes widened, and they were bloodshot. Once again, he spoke in a muffled voice. The corner of Bufong's mouth twitched. Speak clearly. If you don't speak clearly, how will I know what you want to say? Looking at the confused look on Bufong's face, the head judge was so angry that he almost vomited blood. Because of his intense breathing, not only were his lips swollen, even his tongue was swollen. He couldn't even straighten his words. You could directly start testing my dish, Bufong said after thinking for a while. The head judge wanted to cry. He was exhausted. Thus, he didn't say anything. He took out a jade talisman from his bosom and poured his true energy into it. In an instant, a dazzling light shone, and a huge array appeared, enveloping the steamed fish head with chopped hot red peppers. The audience below the stage stopped crying. Some of them had runny noses, and their eyes were red as they looked at the test on the stage. The audience members were also very sad. They were just here to watch the show, so why were they injured? However, they were also a little curious about this extremely spicy dish. This kind of thing, could it be used to advance to the next round? At this moment, the alchemists on the stage also had the same thought. The spiciness was so dense that it hurt their eyes. Could it advance to the next round? However, they were quickly disappointed. The light from the array was so bright that it almost blinded their eyes. The light was so dense that it showed that the spiritual energy contained within the dish was extraordinary, and it was comparable to a spirit pill. A dish that had spiritual energy comparable to a spirit pill. Was he still a chef? It was simply too terrifying. The head judge also didn't dare to believe it. He didn't expect that the spiritual energy in this dish would be so dense. Try it. The taste should be very good, and the effect should be very strong. Bufong said in a very gentle manner. The head judge was stunned, and his heart trembled. He raised his head and looked at Bufong. He saw Bufong's encouraging gaze. Encourage him, I asked. This thing, did he dare to eat it? Just the smell alone was so spicy that he wanted to die. That taste, wouldn't it be so spicy that he started to doubt his life? Eat it. Head judge, we believe in you. Boo-hoo. It's too spicy. Head judge, quickly try it. You can't let us be spice for nothing. That pile of chili, just looking at it makes me feel so spicy. The eyes of the audience below the stage were red and swollen, but they didn't forget to cheer. All of them were so excited that it was as if they had been injected with chicken blood. They were just here to watch a good show. In order to watch a good show, they had sacrificed so much. How could they not see the real show? Just the smell of this dish was already so spicy. If they were to eat it, would they become stupid? Try it, Bufong said. The head judge quickly tasted it so that he could advertise it. After the advertisement, he could return to the store and continue his business. The head judge swallowed a mouthful of saliva. In his heart, he really wanted to reject Bufong. Why did he volunteer to be the referee of this knockout match? Was he stupid? At this moment, he was filled with regret. However, there was no medicine for regret in this world. Thus, he could only pick up his chopsticks with trembling hands. He looked at Bufong, then at the audience below the stage. His heart was trembling. He really wanted to eat it. Slowly, he stretched out his chopsticks and pushed the chili that was covering the fish head to the side. The rosy oil instantly flowed out from the chili, and a rich fragrance filled the air. This caused the head judge's eyes to slightly light up. Although there was a hint of spiciness in this fragrance, it wasn't that scary when he smelled it at such a close distance. The chopsticks exerted force and sank into the meat of the fish head. When the white and tender fish meat was picked up, it emitted a warm aura. The fish meat was extremely soft and tender, and it seemed as if it was trembling slightly. It was crystal clear, and there was spiritual energy circulating around it. It was like a piece of milky white jade. It seemed to be quite good. The head judge was stunned, and he looked at the fish meat in surprise. This white and tender appearance did not seem like it had been stained with chili. He stuffed the fish meat into his mouth. When the fish meat entered his mouth, it was warm and smooth. It was incomparably soft, and with a light bite, it broke into pieces. It seemed as if it was going to smoothly enter his stomach. The fragrance burst forth, and it was accompanied by an extremely dense spiciness. This spiciness was not pungent, and it was not very stimulating. However, the kind of burning spiciness made all the pores on his body open up. This is delicious. The eyes of the head judge emitted a dazzling light. It was unexpectedly delicious, and the spiciness suddenly didn't seem so hard to accept. He picked up another piece of fish meat and stuffed it into his mouth. The fish meat seemed to contain a fragrance and spiciness, and that spiciness seeped into the fish meat. It became gentle, and the spiciness was just right. The audience was dumbfounded as they looked at the head judge, who was getting more and more excited as he ate. The plot shouldn't be like this. Wasn't it supposed to be very spicy? Why was he getting more and more excited as he ate? That look of him not being able to stop, it didn't seem like he was eating chili. Boom! When the head judge was excitedly eating the steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers, Bu Fong took out his signboard and smashed it on the bronze platform. He faced the audience below him, and in a serious manner, he advertised his restaurant. As for Bu Fong's advertisements, they were already used to it. This fellow would basically advertise his restaurant in every match, and as of now, many people knew the name of the Cloud Mist restaurant. After this competition, the Cloud Mist restaurant would probably become famous throughout the entire Heavenly Mist City. The third elimination round had ended. In the first arena, only Bu Fong advanced to the next round. Although this surprised everyone, it seemed to be within reason. At the end of the elimination round, the atmosphere of the entire central square changed. Unknowingly, a warship that blotted out the sun appeared in the sky, emitting a dense pressure. A few figures slowly walked out of the warship. Chapter 504. With the end of the elimination round, the names of the top 100 contestants of the Magical Hand Conference's semifinals were revealed. Suddenly, his eyes widened because he realized that there were only 91 participants, not 100. After announcing Bu Fong's advancement, the head judge continued to deal with the steamed fish head with diced hot red peppers. These figures were the judges for this year's competition. Every one of them was a distinguished Four Clouds alchemist. Their status in the Pill Palace was very high. They were the alchemist experts in charge of this year's competition, maintaining the order of this competition. The audience was in an uproar, and the contestants were also in an uproar. The audience exclaimed in surprise. They raised their heads to look at the alchemy grandmasters floating in the void, and their faces were filled with excitement. There was no other reason than that these grandmasters were their idols. All sorts of strange fluctuations appeared on the arena. Bu Fong actually made it into the top 100. How terrifying! There was only one person. Could it be that only one person had advanced to the first stage of the elimination round? The people around him were all alchemists. Among them, Bu Fong saw many familiar faces. That was because a figure carrying a signboard appeared and attracted their attention. The warship floated in the air. Grandmaster Xian Ming calmly said. Grandmaster Xian Ming looked at the youth and shook his head. Impossible. This person is definitely not an alchemist from my Heavenly Mist City. With the end of the elimination round, the attention of the Magical Hand Conference was getting higher and higher. Under the arrangement of their respective judges, the contestants who made it into the semifinals went to the main arena. Their hearts felt stifled. A grand alchemist furrowed his brows and asked in confusion. The head judge, who was beside him, looked at the name curiously and was instantly dumbfounded. As Grandmaster Xian Ming's true energy surged into the orange-yellow jade talisman, the talismans in the hands of the contestants shone with a dazzling radiance. In the Pill Palace, the stronger one's alchemy skills were, the higher their status would be. In the sky, a vast aura spread out and a huge metallic warship floated in the sky. It was incomparably dazzling. Shouldn't Bufong be staying in the southern region, guarding that little store in that remote area? On the first arena, there were still quite a number of pill refining masters who were howling in frustration. Although he was sweating profusely from the spiciness, his face was red, and his mouth was red and swollen like charcoal. He couldn't stop at all. That delicious feeling was like poison that deeply attracted him. He had never expected to meet Bufong here. Bufong looked at the jade talisman in his hand with a strange expression. After a long time, a name appeared on the jade talisman. When Senior Brother Zhang, who was in the crowd, saw this scene, his heart could not help but tremble. He silently felt heartache for those alchemists who had been eliminated. Cough, cough. After the elimination round is the semi-finals, which is also known as the top 100 competition. The semi-finals are divided into a few rounds. Each of you will be randomly matched with a different opponent. This will be decided by luck. Only by defeating your opponent will you be able to step into the next round. The top 50 competition. A spicy smell permeated the air. A person with a special ability was able to suppress other alchemists and enter the top 100. This youth was definitely not simple. Several figures walked out from the crowd. They were all wearing the robes of an alchemist. However, compared to an ordinary alchemist, their robes were much more noble. The material they were made of was quite extraordinary as well. White clouds were embroidered on their robes, and they looked as though they were slowly floating in the air. It seemed as though it was really delicious. The few four-cloud alchemists slowly landed on the main arena. The surroundings of the arena were filled with arrays. The arrays emitted a dense glow that enveloped the entire arena. It was as if the images on the arena had been condensed into a condensed form. Without waiting for Bufong to say anything, the chief judge wiped his mouth and pulled Bufong down to the arena. Nangong Wuk, who was standing in the distance, was winking at Bufong. However, Bufong did not pay attention to him. Among them, there was no lack of disciples of these alchemists. Could it be that this youth is a person with a special ability? Another person with a special ability managed to enter the top 100? Slurp, slurp. The few alchemists took in a deep breath and looked at Bufong with a strange expression on their faces. They rarely appeared in public because once they did, they would cause a huge commotion. These people had the air of immortals, and they were like immortals. The strange gazes from the crowd caused the chief judge's already red face to become even redder. The other alchemists looked at each other in dismay. When they saw the youth's face, they could not recognize him. These magic arrays were like rotating light wheels. They rotated slowly, and they made the main arena seem like a dream. He was indeed the chef who had caused a huge uproar recently. He was the public enemy of all alchemists. He shouldn't be an alchemist from Heavenly Shine City. I know all the alchemists from Heavenly Shine City who are able to enter the top 100. Grandmaster Yao Wang, the four-cloud alchemist of Heavenly Shine City, said. The disparity between them was too great. Moreover, the other arenas were filled with a large number of people, while his arena only had one contestant. The head judge was stunned for a moment. Then, he raised his head and looked at the few alchemy grandmasters floating in the sky. His expression changed drastically. There was only a lone, expressionless figure standing at the promotion spot in the first ring. He was carrying a huge signboard on his shoulder. After Bufong left, the audience also left the first arena and headed toward the main arena. Bufong waved his hand in disgust and stopped the chief judge's greasy hands. He turned around and walked down the arena with his signboard. The person who was the most shocked was neither Nangong Wuk nor Yang Meiji. It was Duan Yun, who was standing in the distance and looking at Bufong's back. The chief judge felt slightly embarrassed. He isn't an alchemist from Heavenly Pill City. Could he be an alchemist from Heavenly Mist City? However, what is this kid trying to do by carrying his signboard up the arena? Grandmaster Guhi laughed. Buzz. Everyone seemed to have noticed the Grandmaster's gaze, and they all looked toward Bufong. Considering that all of you have been through the elimination rounds for the past few days, you must be mentally strained. Therefore, there will be 3 days of rest and preparation time, so that everyone can properly prepare for the competition of the top 100. 3 days later, the competition of the top 100 will officially begin, and now, you will have to decide your opponents. Which Pill City's alchemist is this? Why is he carrying his signboard up the arena? Suddenly, a Grandmaster's face froze. He looked toward a certain direction in confusion. On the other arenas, there were 10 dignified alchemists, but beside him, there was a chef carrying a signboard. And Sheng? Is she my opponent for the next round? Bufong muttered softly. Yang Meiji, who was standing on the other side, widened her eyes and looked at Bufong with a face full of shock. Her entire being was in a mess. Grandmaster Xianming didn't pursue the matter, and he started explaining the rules of the competition. What was going on? What went wrong? All of a sudden, the Grandmasters were stunned. They looked at each other in dismay. Head Judge, what are you doing? The judge wants all the contestants to gather on the main arena. His entire body felt a chill run down his spine. He was confused, and he didn't understand. It wasn't Heavenly Pill City, Heavenly Shine City. It wasn't even Heavenly Mist City. He didn't know that there was a gathering after the elimination round. He was still preparing to go back and open his shop. Of course, if they knew how Bufong entered the top 100, they wouldn't have such an admiring attitude. They might even have the thought of strangling Bufong to death. Below the first arena, a judge looked at the head judge who was still eating and shouted anxiously. Quick, follow me. Head to the main arena. Duan Yun's face was filled with shock. It was as though he had seen a ghost. As Grandmaster Xianming spoke, he took out an orange-yellow jade talisman from his bosom. The jade talisman was filled with mysterious runes. Boo, Owner Boo. Every contestant on the main arena received a jade talisman from the judge. Delicious. However, when they saw the head judge's red face, they couldn't help but lick their lips. What? Your next opponent is Heavenly Pill City's witch, alchemist, and Sheng? Even if the people from other Pill City didn't come to Heavenly Mist City, they would still be able to watch the magical hand conference. At this moment, below the main arena, there was a huge crowd of spectators gathered below. Heavenly Mist City's Four Clouds alchemist, Grandmaster Xianming, stood up. With his hands clasped behind his back, he looked at the contestants on the arena with a solemn expression. The head judge was so excited that he couldn't help but let out a long sigh. This joke wasn't funny at all. Grandmaster Xianming coldly looked at the head judge. The head judge was so sad that he didn't want to live anymore. The saddest thing in life was that even if he wanted to let someone in through the back door, no one would be able to climb to the front door. The audience was speechless. At this moment, the spiciness had almost dissipated, and no one had any reaction. Why did he suddenly appear here? The main arena was located in the center of the arena. It occupied a vast area. It was so embarrassing. As the head judge, only one person had advanced to the next round. He wanted more people to advance, but all the furnaces had exploded. How could he advance? This was the projection array. It was a mysterious array that could capture images and transmit them to the various pill cities. This was because Bufong's advancement had humiliated many alchemists. The head judge was helpless. He coughed to hide the helplessness and embarrassment in his heart. Bufong was calm. He carried his board and stood among the crowd with an expressionless face. Among these people, only one was from Heavenly Mist City. He was the strongest alchemist in Heavenly Mist City, a Four Clouds alchemist, Grandmaster Xianming. In the entire Pill Palace, there were very few Five Clouds alchemists. However, every single one of them was famous. Heavenly Pill City, Heavenly Shine City, Heavenly Mist City. All of them had experts. The few Grandmasters sat on high seats, and they all had gentle expressions on their faces as they chatted. No one knew what they were talking about. Why did they meet such a freak? Cough, cough. First of all, congratulations to everyone for successfully passing the elimination round. Among the tens of thousands of participating alchemists, you are now in the top 100. The head judge smiled awkwardly. He didn't have much of a reaction as he followed them. Sometimes, their gazes would land on the young alchemist who was slowly walking up the stage. They would nod their heads and smile as they said something. These grandmasters actually felt a bit of admiration for him. The head judge's red face became even redder. It was so red that it turned purple. Bufang naturally didn't know that there were people staring at him. He carried his board and stood there impatiently. Chapter 505. Sorceress and Sheng? Who is she? Is she really that powerful? Bufang seemed to have heard the chief judge's exclamation. He turned his head and asked. The chief judge looked at Bufang speechlessly. You don't even know Sorceress and Sheng? She was a genius alchemist from Heavenly Pill City. Her strength had reached the 2 clouds, and she was a strong contender for the top 10 positions in this year's Magical Hand Conference. Of course, this was not the main point. The main point was that as someone from Heavenly Mist City, he actually didn't know Sorceress and Sheng's name. Sorceress and Sheng. She is beautiful and powerful. She is the idol of everyone in Heavenly Pill City. She is the dream lover of many alchemists. In the previous Magical Hand Conference, Sorceress and Sheng was ranked 27th. This time, she is aiming for the top 10. The chief judge sighed. When he talked about Sorceress and Sheng, his expression changed. And then, Bufang held the signboard in one hand and held the jade talisman in the other. He looked at the chief judge and said calmly, And then you are finished. Originally, the chief judge thought that this chef would become the dark horse of this year's Magical Hand Conference. Now, it seemed like this dark horse would not be able to run far. If he met Sorceress and Sheng, he would definitely lose. Sorceress and Sheng is not someone that the alchemist you met before can compare to. Her mental energy is extremely strong. The taste of your dishes cannot affect her at all. If you want to make her explode her furnace to win, the chances of you winning are slim. The chief judge sighed. The surrounding contestants looked at the jade talismans in their hands and started chattering. Some of them were excited, and some of them sighed. All sorts of expressions appeared. Nangang Wuk's condition wasn't normal. His face was flushed, and Bufang looked at him with a strange expression before retracting his gaze. Waha, I met Lin Sanpao. That be Astra's starred. If I don't make him cry, my surname is not Nan. Nangang Wuk shouted excitedly. The surrounding people looked at him as if he was an idiot. Lin Sanpao's face was filled with black lines. He wanted to slap Nangang Wuk to death. Who is he calling AB Astra's starred? Your whole family is AB Astra's starred. However, he still felt a slight headache in his heart. After all, Nangang Wuk was still very powerful. Even without the heaven and earth obsidian flame, he was still an opponent that could not be underestimated. All right, since you all know who your opponents are, you may leave now. 3 days from now, the Magical Hand Conference will be held here, and the competition for the top 100 will begin. I hope that everyone will be able to participate in the competition on time and display your skills. Grandmaster Xian Ming said solemnly. The contestants below all nodded in agreement. After saying that, Grandmaster Xian Ming and the other Grandmasters flew up and charged towards the warship that was floating in the void. The audience below began to clamor. He watched as the Masters left. After the Masters left, the contestants in the main arena also began to disperse. Under the head judge's sympathetic gaze, Bufang turned around and walked down the stage. He was in a hurry to get back to business. Old Bu, wait for me. Nangang Wuk was so excited that he danced with joy. His face was flushed red as he jumped beside Bufang. In the distance, Duan Yun looked at Bufang's back. He wanted to say something, but after thinking for a while, he decided not to. He decided that he would find out more about Bufang when he got back. With Owner Bu's personality, he would definitely not be a nobody in Heavenly Mist City. Old Bu, you are awesome. I never thought that you would actually be able to enter the top 100. This is simply too cool. You are the first chef in history to enter the top 100 of the Magical Hand Conference. Ha ha ha. It sounds so exciting. Nangang Wuk chattered beside Bufang. Bufang's face was expressionless as he walked forward. He was too lazy to care about this clown. That's right. Who is your opponent in the competition for the top 100? Tell me. I can give you some advice. Nangong Wuk seemed to have thought of something and suddenly asked. Bu Fong was stunned. I think she is called Sheng. Sorceress Sheng. Bu Fong's words caused Nangong Wuk to be stunned. In the next moment, he exclaimed in shock with an exaggerated expression. Sorceress Sheng? What the F asterisk CK? Bu, why is your luck so good? Sorceress Sheng. Good luck. Why was it different for what the chief judge said? Bu Fong was a little confused. Sorceress Sheng is a beautiful woman with big breasts. You were actually able to compete with her on the same stage. You were able to see her big breasts up close. Even if you lost, it would be worth it. I'm so jealous. Nangong Wuk sighed with a serious expression. Beautiful and has big breasts. Is this what you are focusing on with your serious expression? Bu Fong was speechless. Shouldn't you be focusing on your opponent's strength? Bu Fong was too lazy to talk to Nangong Wuk, who had no idea what was going on. He quickened his pace and disappeared from the central plaza. Heavenly Pill City's warship. Duan Yun returned to the warship in a daze. This time, his opponent was not a famous alchemist. He was confident that he could defeat him. The reason he was in a daze was because of Bu Fong. He did not expect Bu Fong to appear in Heavenly Mist City. Moreover, he even participated in the Magical Hand Conference. He really could not understand. In the distance, a woman with a voluptuous figure leisurely walked over. She wore a long red dress with a slit at the bottom. Her fair and beautiful legs were faintly discernible, and she exuded a different kind of allure. However, what was even more alluring were her towering breasts. They seemed as though they were about to burst out of her clothes. Little Duan, what are you thinking about? When the woman saw Duan Yun, her eyes lit up, and she gently called out to him. Duan Yun, who was in a daze, felt his hair stand on end. In the distance, Senior Brother Zhang and the others, who originally wanted to come over and strike up a conversation with Duan Yun, ran away as though they had seen a ghost. They silently mourned for Duan Yun in their hearts. Duan Yun was stunned. When he raised his head, he saw a beautiful and enchanting face. This woman had a head full of purple hair. Coupled with her long red dress, she looked extremely beautiful. And Senior Sister, when Duan Yun saw this woman, a bitter expression appeared on his face. What's wrong? Little Duan, are you feeling unwell? Do you need me to massage you? The woman moved closer to Duan Yun and said in a seductive manner. Duan Yun's hair stood on end, and he retreated several steps. He looked at the woman in fear. I'm fine. I was just lost in thought. Massage? Would he dare to let a woman massage him? The last man who was massaged by her was currently lying in bed. This terrifying woman. Little Duan, why are you standing so far away? Am I that scary? Come over and have a good chat with me. Senior Sister, I still need to prepare the elixirs for the top 100 competition. Let's talk next time. Duan Yun felt as though his gray hair was about to dry up and fall onto his forehead. He turned around and was about to run away. However, the woman's soft and delicate hand pressed on his shoulder, causing his body to stiffen. Why don't you try running? Sorceress Sheng said with a smile. Duan Yun stopped running and turned around with a look of despair on his face. That's right. Little Duan, who's your opponent in the next round? Do you need me to help you take care of him? Sorceress Sheng said with a smile as she held Duan Yun's hand. No, there's no need. That opponent is nothing to be afraid of. Duan Yun said awkwardly. As though he wanted to change the topic, Duan Yun asked, Senior Sister, who's your opponent? My opponent? I don't know him. He should be a small alchemist. He's also nothing to be afraid of. However, his name is quite interesting. What's his name? Bu Fong? I'm really nervous. Bu Fong. Owner Bu. Duan Yun was stunned as he cried out in surprise. Huh, little Duan, you know him? Sorceress Sheng was taken aback and asked in astonishment. Of course I know him. Senior Sister, I'm afraid you're in trouble. Duan Yun took a deep breath and said solemnly. Oh, why are you so serious? Could it be that this Bu Fong is the disciple of some great alchemist? And Sheng said with a smile. No, Bu Fong, he's a chef. An awesome chef. Duan Yun's eyes seemed to be shining as he said solemnly. Bufong carried the signboard back to the store. As soon as he reached the entrance, he was shocked. There was a large group of people in front of the store, and it was very lively. These people were all customers. Among them, there were some that Bufong was familiar with, but there were also some that Bufong was very unfamiliar with. Oh, Owner Boo is back. Owner Boo, good job. He made it into the top 100. I saw Owner Boo's advertisement during the elimination round, so I rushed over immediately. When the customers saw that Bufong had returned, they chattered nonstop. Their enthusiasm made Bufong's little heart feel a little scared. Squeezing through the crowd, Bufong opened the bronze door and returned to the store. Please line up in an orderly manner. Let you know when you're ordering. Bufong stood at the entrance and said a few words to the customers outside. Then, he turned around and entered the kitchen. Yu's pitch-black eyes swept across the group of customers. The customers instantly felt as if their bodies had fallen into an ice cave. The originally noisy crowd immediately calmed down. This woman, her eyes were very sharp. The customers ordered their dishes in an orderly manner. Bufong started cooking in the kitchen and opened the door for business. Someone asked Bufong about his opponent in the top 100 competition. Bufong did not hide it and directly said Sorceress and Shung's name. In an instant, the customers were in an uproar. Even Bufong was shocked. Sorceress and Shung? Is she the Heavenly Pill City's Sorceress and Shung? Oh my god, my dream lover. Owner Boo, you're finished. Owner Boo, don't be afraid. In the next Magical Hand Conference, we'll be a group of heroes again. Losing to Sorceress and Shung is not embarrassing. None of the customers thought highly of Bufong. Sorceress and Shung's reputation was really too great. Bufong did not care. However, his heart was slightly moved. It seemed like this woman was really powerful. Almost no one thought highly of him. This was indeed a little embarrassing. Playing with the dragon bone kitchen knife in his hand, Bufong was speechless as he thought to himself. The chief judge didn't think highly of him. Nangong Wuk didn't think highly of him. And even the customers who were eating the food he cooked didn't think highly of him. Bufong furrowed his brows. The dragon bone kitchen knife chopped down on the chopping board as he fell into deep thought. Facing such a powerful opponent, what kind of dish should he take out? An ordinary dish naturally wouldn't work. It seemed like he had to take out a high-end dish. Bufong took a deep breath and thought to himself. Since Nangong Wan had been eliminated in the elimination round of the Magical Hand Conference, Nangong Wuk patted his chest and said that he would treat her. As the Magical Hand Conference continued, Bufong's many advertisements were released. The Cloud Mist restaurant's reputation in Heavenly Mist City was already not small. Many people would come to the restaurant to have a meal. They wanted to experience how powerful the chef, who could defeat many alchemists, was. When they saw Bufong's fragrant dishes below the stage, they felt an unbearable itch in their hearts, and they couldn't wait to taste it. However, they didn't have a chance to taste it. Now that there was a chance, they naturally rushed over to try it. Although many of the dishes cooked by Bufong on the stage couldn't be found in the store, after tasting the other dishes, they were completely captivated. The temptation of delicious food wasn't something that the Pill Palace's citizens, who ate dry and tasteless fasting pills every day, could resist. The fasting pills were convenient, but in Bufong's opinion, people's daily need to taste delicious food was something that couldn't be ignored. If there was no delicious food in one's life, it would be much less fun. Sizzle. After a series of stir-frying and shaking of the wok, a fragrant aroma wafted out. With a flick of the spatula, Bufong scooped out the ruddy red braised meat from the wok and poured it into a blue and white porcelain plate. Billowing steam rose up, and under the illumination of the light, the red braised meat looked like a ruby. He placed the red braised meat near the window and signaled you to bring it over. Today, you wouldn't secretly eat these dishes anymore. After all, she had already secretly eaten these dishes many times, and they were no longer fresh to her. After placing the dishes in front of the customers, you suddenly furrowed her brows. She raised her exquisite and beautiful face and looked outside the door. A figure wrapped in a black robe slowly walked over from afar. His body was incomparably sinister, and with every step he took, the sinister aura around him became even denser. The customers in the queue felt the terrifying aura emitted by the black-robed person, and they were all slightly afraid. This person was carrying a bronze coffin on his back, and he seemed quite mysterious. Cloud Mist Restaurant. After entering the store, the black-robed person emitted a scarlet radiance as he spoke in a soft and hoarse voice. Nangong Wuk was curled up on a chair, and he squinted his eyes as he basked in the warm sunlight. Suddenly, he felt a chill, and he couldn't help but shiver. When he opened his eyes, he saw the ghost-like person. When he looked over, the black-robed person also looked over. "Brother, line up. Olbu's restaurant doesn't allow people to cut the line," Nangong Wuk said with a frown. The black-robed person's scarlet gaze swept over Bu Fong indifferently, and he coldly said, "Line up. In my dictionary, there is no such thing as line up. Don't. I'm just reminding you out of goodwill, and I'm afraid that you will regret it later," Nangong Wuk hurriedly said. However, the black-robed person's aura surged, and he took a step forward, and the pressure of heaven and earth surged forth. The bronze coffin on his back was immediately raised, and he smashed it toward Nangong Wuk. "What the hell? Fighting just because of a disagreement? Did he really think that your grandpa Nangong was a joke?" Nangong Wuk's eyes narrowed. After experiencing the incident with the Nangong family, even though Nangong Wuk still looked like a clown, in reality, he had changed a lot. Boom! The bronze coffin ruthlessly smashed into the ground, and Nangong Wuk's figure was sent flying back a few steps. Interesting. Could it be that there is a protective array on the ground? It actually didn't explode. The black-robed person's hoarse voice rang out once more. The surrounding customers all sucked in a breath of cold air. The black-robed person carrying the bronze coffin. Nangong Wuk looked at the bronze coffin, and he finally reacted, and he took a deep breath. "So, it's the puppet sex expert. Bronze Coffin and Goo." Bronze Coffin and Goo, an expert from the puppet sect, had broken through 3 supreme being shackles. He controlled an ancient corpse, and his battle prowess was comparable to an expert who had broken through 4 supreme being shackles. Within the puppet sect, Ngu could be considered a top-notch expert among the younger generation. He was on the same level as the top 3 geniuses of the Grand Baron sect and the monstrous alchemists of the Pill Palace. Such an existence appeared in the store, and he even took out a coffin. Could it be that he wanted to cause trouble? "Nangong Wuk, and the owner of this restaurant, why are you 2 still alive?" Ngu's hoarse voice rang out, and it seemed as though he was answering his own question. His aura continued to rise, and his black robe fluttered in the wind. It was as though there was an air blower blowing on it. "What do you mean? Is it strange that we're still alive?" Nangong Wuk was speechless. Was this person an idiot? He, Nangong Wuk, didn't do anything to deserve to be struck by lightning. Was it strange that he was still alive? Buzz, however, just as he finished speaking, the eyes of the black-robed person shone brightly, and he coldly said, "2 of my puppet sect disciples died in that secret realm. Why are you 2 still alive? Why don't you go and die?" Creak! A teeth-numbing sound rang out, and the bronze coffin rubbed against the ground as it flew toward Nangong Wuk. It was so heavy that it seemed as though the air around it was about to collapse. The customers in the surrounding dodged it, and they naturally knew of Ngu's name. The experts of the puppet sect. They were people who would definitely seek revenge for the smallest grievance. Every single one of them was extremely protective of their own people. There weren't many disciples in the puppet sect, and it wasn't easy for them to cultivate. Every single disciple of the puppet sect was a precious resource for the sect. In the Heavenly Mist City's secret realm, 2 outstanding disciples of the puppet sect had actually died. How can Gu not be enraged? Nangong Wuk's feet touched the ground, and his figure flashed as he dodged the attack. Bu Fong slowly walked out of the kitchen, and his slender and thin figure appeared in front of him. He wiped off the water stains on his hands, and he expressionlessly looked at the black-robed person who was holding onto the bronze coffin. He indifferently said, "You are not allowed to cause trouble in the store." Ngu held onto the bronze coffin with one hand, and he slowly turned his head around. The scarlet light in his black robe swept toward Bufang. Are you the owner of this restaurant?" A hoarse voice rang out, and it was filled with a chilling aura that caused one's hair to stand on end. "Yes," Bufang indifferently replied. You also entered the secret realm, and you even came out alive?" Ngu's voice sounded even more sinister than before. "Yes," Bufang indifferently replied. Thump! The bronze coffin fell onto the ground, and Ngu's ice-cold voice was filled with malice. He said, "You are also someone who deserves to die." Rumble! With a wave of his hand, the heavy bronze coffin was flung out by Ngu, and it flew toward Bufang. Everyone was shocked, and they all let out cries of alarm. Nangongwan's beautiful face turned pale, and her complexion was devoid of blood. It was the bronze coffin Ngu. He was the strongest expert of the puppet sect's younger generation. He actually wanted to kill the owner Boo. Walala! It was as though the air was being crushed. The bronze coffin came whistling over, spinning and smashing toward Bufang. Bufang calmly rubbed his slender fingers, and his expression didn't change in the slightest. The bronze coffin flew toward him, and the strong wind it brought with it tore the velvet rope that was tied around his hair. His hair fluttered in the wind, and his hair fluttered in the wind. I said before, no one is allowed to cause trouble in the store. Don't you understand? Just as the bronze coffin was about to hit Bufang, he finally opened his mouth. However, his words caused the expressions of many people to change. The owner Boo was still as domineering as ever. Even in the face of death, his expression didn't change. "Awesome, Buzz Troublemaker. You will be stripped as an example to others." A buzzing sound resounded through the kitchen, and a figure made of steel shot out. His purple eyes flickered unceasingly, and an oppressive aura spread out in all directions. Outside the store, two figures slowly walked over. One of them was a handsome man who carried a pitch-black broadsword on his back, and the other was a gentle man who wore a green robe. The two of them stood not far from the restaurant, and when they saw the commotion in the store, they were taken aback. The gentle man who wore a green robe lightly smiled. "Brother Shimin, it seems like we are late. Someone beat us to it." The eyes of the man who carried the broadsword on his back narrowed, and he furrowed his brows. Suddenly, the two of them narrowed their eyes, and they looked toward the direction of the restaurant. They only heard a cry of alarm and a loud sound. A figure was thrown out of the restaurant in a sorry state. Chapter 507. And senior sister, and don't be like this. Duan Yun's face flushed red, and his eyes were filled with grief and indignation. He felt as though he was being burned by fire as the surrounding people looked at him strangely. Actually, Duan Yun was also very depressed. Early in the morning, he was preparing to go to the warship's alchemy room to practice his fire control techniques. However, just as he walked out of his room, he bumped into Sorceress and Sheng, who was leaning against the wall. This woman's eyes shone brightly. Without saying a word, she carried him and dashed out of the warship. He was a 7 feet tall man, yet he was being carried by a woman. Wasn't it very embarrassing? Could she not be like this? How was he going to find a wife in the future? Duan Yin was very sad. Sorceress and Sheng's cultivation level was very high. Thus, her speed was extremely fast. Duan Yin, who was being carried by Sheng, had a face filled with grief and indignation. His gray hair fluttered in the strong wind, constantly slapping against his face. "Be quiet. This elder sister is in a hurry. This elder sister is very curious about the owner boo that you were talking about. Today I will go and meet him. Aren't you two old acquaintances? This elder sister will fulfill your wish." Sorceress and Sheng's slender and beautiful legs strode forward. In an instant, she covered a large distance. It was as though she had shrunk the distance. Her voluptuous body trembled slightly. Her chest rose and fell. Duan Yin felt pain and happiness at the same time. However, he was still stunned by Sorceress and Sheng's words. Was she going to meet Owner Bu? He wasn't ready yet. Boom! A loud explosion resounded. Everyone in the store felt as though their hearts were in their throats. Their eyes widened as they looked at the scene in front of them. The bronze coffin Engu had smashed out was blocked. It was caught by a huge figure and floated in the air. It was a puppet. Its entire body was covered in iron armor. Its mechanical eyes flickered with a purple radiance, and a tyrannical aura was emitted from its body. Nangong Wan and Nangong Wuk took a deep breath and relaxed. They had been working in the restaurant for a long time and were quite familiar with Xiaobai. They knew that Bu Fong had a powerful puppet. However, the customers who just came to the store were surprised. It turned out that owner Bu had such a puppet as his trump card. However, many people looked at the puppet, and their expressions became strange again. Is it really okay for owner Bu to do this? Playing with puppets in front of the puppet sex experts. Why do I feel so excited all of a sudden? I wonder if the puppet sex experts' puppets or owner Bu's puppets are stronger. There was a puppet in the bronze coffin and Goo smashed out, right? When the surrounding customers saw that Bu Fong was safe, they all heaved a sigh of relief and started chattering nonstop. They were curious and excited. Bu Fong grabbed his hair, and his gaze landed on Ngu's body. His gaze gradually turned cold and indifferent. I said before, no one is allowed to cause trouble in the restaurant. It seems like you really don't understand. Ngu glanced at Bu Fong, and his red eyes turned to stare at Xiaobai. A trace of surprise flashed past his eyes. Puppet. What a strange puppet. The style of this puppet was completely different from the style of the puppet sex puppets. Interesting. A puppet? You are the first person to play with a puppet in front of the puppet sect. The iron coffin Ngu laughed in a hoarse voice. Then, he raised his hand, and the sleeve of his black robe fell off, revealing a palm with pitch-black fingernails. That palm was warm and smooth like jade, and there were many strange patterns engraved on it. Buzz, a wave of fluctuation spread out. In the next moment, the bronze coffin in Xiao Bai's hand started to tremble. A creaking sound could be heard, and it seemed as though it came from the ancient times. The lid of the coffin started to tremble and slowly opened up, and Gu's scarlet eyes, which were wrapped in the black robe, became redder and redder. It seemed like a faint laughter could be heard. In the next moment, everyone felt their hearts tremble. Even Nangong Wuk narrowed his eyes, and his heart trembled. They saw a figure slowly standing up from the bronze coffin. The scene was extremely strange. Xiaobai grabbed onto the bronze coffin, and a figure slowly crawled out from the coffin. An ice-cold aura continuously surged out from the figure. When everyone saw the figure crawling out from the coffin, they sucked in a breath of cold air. The figure standing in the coffin was a pitch-black humanoid puppet. It was said to be a puppet because it didn't look like a human from the outside. Is this the corpse of Coffin Ngu? It was the corpse puppet that he regarded as a treasure. The corpse puppet was pitch black, and it was impossible to discern its human form. It had a bald head, and there were many patterns on it. Its skin had a metallic luster, and it seemed as though it was made of metal. The corpse puppet's eyes were scarlet, and when it met Xiao Bai's purple eyes, it seemed as though there was a lightning bolt exploding in their line of sight. Roar! The corpse puppet opened its mouth and let out a roar that sounded like that of a wild beast. Xiao Bai's purple eyes flickered, and in the end, they turned white. It was incomparably awe-inspiring. Troublemaker, you will be stripped as an example to others. Boom! The corpse puppet instantly rushed out from the bronze coffin and swept its leg towards Xiao Bai's head. The terrifying wind created by the kick seemed as though it was going to tear the air apart. Bang! 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 Xiao Bai exerted force and pushed the bronze coffin away. He raised his huge fist and smashed it against the corpse puppet's leg. The sound of metal clashing against metal could be heard. Whitey retreated a few steps, and the corpse puppet also somersaulted back to Ngu's side. With a loud thud, the bronze coffin landed on the ground, and a sinister aura was emitted from it. Interesting, Interesting. It can actually withstand an attack from my corpse puppet. This puppet. Interesting. The red light in Ngu's black robe became brighter, and he shouted excitedly. Xiaobai released his aura, and his body shot out. He turned into a bolt of lightning and rushed towards the corpse puppet. The corpse puppet let out a clanging sound and twisted its body as it charged towards Ngu. In the distance, under the pathfinder standing tree, Blackish slowly opened its eyes and glanced lazily at the corpse puppet whose body was as black as charcoal. It opened its mouth and yawned. After that, it lay down on the ground and went back to sleep. Bang! Bang! Xiaobai and the corpse puppet fought fiercely, and they continuously collided with each other. This caused the surrounding customers to exclaim in surprise. Ngu was so excited that his entire body was trembling. I didn't expect that there would be such a pleasant surprise this time around. If I can bring this puppet back and study it properly, my strength will definitely increase by another level. Ngu shouted in a hoarse voice, and he became even more excited. The aura on his body surged, and his true energy flowed slowly. 3 ice-cold, true energy chains swayed behind his back. Bufang looked at Ngu indifferently, and he couldn't help but furrow his brows. He turned his head and looked at the expressionless Yu. He waved his hand at her. Yu was stunned for a moment, and she walked towards Bufang's side with her sparkling feet. Her long black hair fluttered in the wind. "You, throw that troublemaker out. Tonight, I will increase the amount of dragon blood rice for you." Bufang moved closer to Yu's ear and said indifferently, "Increase the amount of dragon blood rice?" Yu's expressionless face suddenly changed. She pouted her small mouth and looked at Bufang excitedly. "Double the amount. No problem." Bufang nodded his head. After hearing Bufang's reply, Yu's eyes lit up. With a swoosh, Bufang felt a gust of wind rise, and Nethery, who was standing next to him, disappeared without him noticing. Xiaobai and the corpse puppet were fighting. Suddenly, the corpse puppet's movements became sluggish. Xiaobai was also dumbfounded, because in the middle of them, there was a graceful figure standing there. Her long, straight black hair fluttered slightly under her surging aura. Yu looked at the corpse puppet with a bright gaze. What kind of gaze was that? The corpse puppet opened its mouth and roared at Yu. However, in the next moment, Yu took a step forward and appeared above the corpse puppet's head. Her fair hands grabbed the corpse puppet's head. No matter how hard the corpse puppet struggled, it couldn't break free. 1, 2, 3, go! After swaying a few times, Yu swung her arm and threw the pitch-black corpse puppet out of the store like a cannonball. It flew out of the store and landed on the floor outside, smashing it into pieces. The green-robed man and the man with the heavy sword on his back were shocked by the sudden appearance of the corpse puppet. The man with the heavy sword on his back was Shimin Xian, ranked 3rd among the Grand Baron's sect's 10 great sons of heaven. He was in charge of investigating the death of the Grand Baron's sect's Yicheng. The green-robed man was an expert from the Wind and Thunder Pavilion, Xiaohe. The two of them didn't expect to encounter such an exciting situation right before they arrived at the restaurant. It seemed like someone had arrived before them. In the restaurant, everyone was dumbfounded. Ngu's breath stagnated, and he was at a loss. What happened just now? Whitey was also a little confused as it stood on the spot. It raised its fan-like palm and scratched its round head. It was in a daze as it looked at Nethery, who was floating in the void. Bufang's mouth twitched. He was speechless. At this moment, he only wanted to say, "Sister, you threw the wrong person." Bufang wanted to throw the arrogant Ngu out of his store. He didn't expect you to turn him into a puppet. You couldn't have been blinded by the temptation of delicacies, right? He had accidentally made a beautiful mistake. After you threw the puppet out, she turned her head and her pitch-black eyes landed on Ngu, who was wrapped in a black robe. Her long black hair trembled and it cascaded down like a waterfall. Ngu was startled and he roared angrily. His true energy surged as he tried to block the hair. However, he was quickly filled with despair. He realized that he couldn't block it. His hands and feet were bound, and the swaying chains of true energy on his back were also shattered. He couldn't move at all. You took a step forward and floated in front of Ngu. Her pitch-black eyes were filled with a dense aura of death. That aura of death caused Ngu's entire body to tremble. Terrifying. Too terrifying. What exactly was this woman? Buzz, troublemaker. You will be stripped as an example to others. Suddenly, a mechanical voice rang out. It was unknown when Xiao Bai popped his head out from behind you. Nethery was stunned. Ngu was stunned as well. Strip as an example to others? Strip. Strip your sister. You broken puppet. Don't come over. Don't come over. Ngu looked at the flickering light in Xiao Bai's mechanical eyes, and his heart trembled. In the next moment, rip, rip, along with an angry roar, clothes flew everywhere. The clothes of the black-robed man were instantly stripped off, revealing Ngu's face and figure, which were hidden under the black robe. However, his figure caused everyone to suck in a breath of cold air. Chapter 508. Rip. A crisp and melodious sound of cloth tearing rang out, and it reverberated throughout the entire store. Ngu's black robe was torn apart by Xiao Bai, and it turned into pieces that filled the sky. Ngu's figure, which was wrapped in the black robe, was gradually revealed. When everyone saw Ngu's figure, they sucked in a breath of cold air and their pupils constricted. When the surrounding customers saw Ngu's figure, they couldn't help but let out a cry of surprise. After the crowd recovered from their shock, a look of fear appeared in their eyes. Ngu, who was wearing the black robe, had a head full of short hair. His skin was pale, and there was no color in it. His pair of scarlet eyes were filled with panic and helplessness. However, it was undeniable that he had a beautiful face. He had a heroic beauty to him. No one would have thought that Ngu would actually be a woman. However, the fact that Ngu was a woman wasn't the reason why they were afraid. The main reason was because of her body. How was that a human's body? Below the neck, other than her fair hands, the rest of her body was made up of metal. She was a living metal puppet. She didn't have the graceful figure of a woman. She didn't have the smooth skin that could intoxicate people. All she had was a terrifying aura. Even though she was a woman, she didn't have the kind of beauty that belonged to a woman. Everyone was dumbfounded. They did not expect to see such a scene that would make their blood run cold. The puppet sect was indeed a perverted sect. I didn't expect Ngu to be a woman. Is she really a woman? He transformed his own body into a puppet. He's so ugly. It's too scary. The puppet sect is indeed a perverted sect. Not only are they ruthless to others, they are even more ruthless to themselves. The customers sucked in a breath of cold air as they discussed among themselves. From time to time, their gazes would glance at Ngu's body, and a look of fear could be seen in their eyes. This appearance, could it be that she was the legendary puppet? It was the most vicious method of the puppet sect. They transformed the body of a living person into a puppet. The puppet would possess powerful might and a long lifespan. Damn it! Damn it! All of you must die. Ngu's eyes widened and a boundless killing intent radiated from his eyes. She opened her mouth and spoke in a hoarse voice, but if one listened carefully, they could still hear a trace of a sharp female voice in the hoarse voice. This was the sound of Ngu losing his composure. He was unable to control his voice. She was furious to the extreme. Although she was a member of the puppet sect and didn't care much about her appearance, she would still go crazy if she was exposed in front of so many people, even if she was just a puppet. However, just as she finished her sentence, Xiao Bai's grayish-white eyes flashed. With a wave of his fan-like hand, Ngu was flung out of the store. Rumble. Sure, Xiao and Ngu were both flung out of the store. How could such a powerful expert be flung out so easily? The customers were all astonished by what they saw. The puppets and the terrifying woman in this store were truly terrifying. Shimin Xian was carrying a heavy sword on his back. When he saw the two figures being flung out of the store, he couldn't help but be startled. The eyes of the green-robed man, Xiao He, lit up. That's a corpse puppet from the puppet sect. Then the other one, hiss, could be Puppet Coffin and Goo. That fellow is actually a woman. It seems like we will be able to watch a good show. The experts of the puppet sect are not to be trifled with. After all, the puppet sect's notorious reputation is not something to be trifled with. The corners of Xiao He's mouth curled up as he stood far away, with Shimin Xian. He looked at Ngu and the corpse puppet who were crawling up from the ground. A terrifying and stifling aura surged out from Ngu's body. Ngu's body was completely made of metal. The crisscrossing metal frame wrapped around an unceasingly beating heart. Every time the heart beat, a dense amount of spiritual energy would be emitted from it. All of you must die. Ngu crawled up from the ground in a sorry state. The scarlet in her eyes became even more intense. She opened her mouth and let out a hoarse roar. The heartbeat became even more intense. True energy shot up into the sky and turned into a swaying chain. Rumble. The corpse puppet had changed. The patterns on its body actually lit up, and a terrifying aura was emitted from it. Bufang walked forward slowly, and his figure gradually appeared in the restaurant. He was calm and collected. Without the velvet rope binding his hair, he looked at Ngu, who was about to go crazy, with an expressionless face. With a wave of his hand, the bronze coffin was thrown out by Bufang. When the coffin landed on the ground, it emitted a dull thud, and a cloud of dust rose up from the ground. Xiao Bai's ash-gray eyes flickered as he stood behind Bufang like a gigantic monster. Yu's sparkling feet floated in the air. With a light tap of her feet, her figure floated forward. That elegant black dress and that long black hair, it made you look like a fairy. She was filled with an elegant aura. I told you not to cause trouble in the store. You didn't listen. Bufang looked at Ngu's mechanical body and furrowed his brows. He then calmly spat out a sentence. If Ngu didn't create a ruckus in the store, Xiao Bai wouldn't have stripped her clothes. Even though it was indecent to strip a woman's clothes, this woman only had herself to blame. I will kill you, Ngu said coldly with a hoarse voice. She raised her sparkling white palm, and a light flickered on it. With a wave of her hand, she waved it toward Bufang. The corpse puppet beside her roared and stomped on the ground. Cracks appeared on the ground as it stomped on the ground. Even though the heavenly mist city's array was repairing the cracks, the fact that a single stomp from the corpse puppet had such destructive power was enough to show how terrifying the corpse puppet was. Bang! A terrifying gust of wind whistled through the air, and it caused the air to feel as though it couldn't withstand the pressure. After all, this was a corpse puppet that could fight against someone who had broken through 3 Supreme Being shackles. At this moment, the might of the corpse puppet was extremely terrifying. The hearts of the customers shrank, and they didn't even dare to breathe loudly. Shimin Xian and Xiao He, who were in the distance, were stunned as they looked at the scene in front of them with a serious expression. Coffin puppet Ngu. She was indeed powerful. Just this corpse puppet alone was enough for her to fight for a place among the younger generation. Bufang stood at the entrance, calmly looking at the corpse puppet that was rushing toward him like a beam of light. The force of the corpse puppet's fists brushed against his face, causing his skin to feel a little painful. However, just as the corpse puppet was about to hit Bufang, who was beside him suddenly moved. The pitch-black hair was like a sharp blade as it cut down fiercely. The corpse puppet waved its fists and collided with the hair. The indestructible body of the corpse puppet was actually sliced into pieces like tofu. Ngu's body trembled, and she looked at the corpse puppet whose arm was sliced off in disbelief. How is this possible? Her corpse puppet was made from ancient corpses, and countless precious materials were added into it. It was indestructible and was even tougher than a half-divine tool. How is it possible for it to be sliced by a strand of hair? Was her eyesight playing tricks on her? Yu's eyes turned incomparably black, and even the whites of her eyes were covered by the color of ink. Her entire being was filled with killing intent. Her figure flashed as if she had teleported, and in the next moment, she stood in front of Bufang. Although the corpse puppet had one of its arms sliced off, it didn't slow down at all. It roared and rushed toward Bufang. Yu's black dress fluttered in the wind, and her slender and fair legs were faintly discernible. Her beautiful face was cold and expressionless. She raised her palm and fiercely slapped the corpse puppet. With a loud bang, the corpse puppet was directly smashed to the ground by an invisible force. How is this possible? Ngu's heart trembled, and her originally pale face turned even paler. In the next moment, a malevolent and crazed expression appeared on her face. Crawl up. Kill. She formed a seal with her hands, and a strange wave of energy spread out. The corpse puppet that was smashed onto the ground roared crazily, and energy gushed out from its body. It rolled up from the ground and rushed toward you. Yu's expression was cold and elegant. She casually slammed her palm down, and the corpse puppet that had just managed to crawl up was smashed onto the ground once again. Boom, boom, boom. After a few consecutive slaps, the corpse puppet's body was filled with cracks. Poochie. Ngu's face turned pale, and she spat out a mouthful of blood. Her heart, which was under the metal frame, seemed to contract. How was this possible? How could that woman be so strong? Why? Her corpse puppet, which was comparable to a half-divine tool, was actually smashed into pieces. Could it be that this woman was an expert who had broken through 5 of the supreme beings' shackles? The surrounding customers were also shocked. Although they didn't feel it as clearly as Ngu, they were still shocked by Yu's strength. At the very least, they knew that Yu was much stronger than Ngu. Ngu's heart trembled, and she realized that she had lost contact with the corpse puppet. She could no longer control the corpse puppet. Damn it! The corpse puppet was smashed into pieces by Yu, and it turned into pieces on the ground. Ngu took a deep breath, and her face turned pale. She waved her hand, and the bronze coffin on the ground flew back to her side. Holding onto the bronze coffin, Ngu looked at Bu Fong, who was standing calmly at the entrance of the shop. His eyes were incomparably deep. In the next moment, she turned around and fled. Even the corpse puppet was smashed into pieces. Why would she stay behind to seek death? You didn't chase after her, and she was too lazy to do so. Her figure floated in the air as she flew past Bu Fong. She pouted and said, "Remember to give me twice the amount of dragon blood rice tonight." After saying that, under the speechless gaze of Bu Fong, this woman flew back into the shop. The customers looked at this woman in awe. As expected of the owner, Bu Hu caused trouble during the magical hand conference. Even his subordinates were so terrifying. Shimin Xian and Xiao, he looked at Ngu, who didn't hesitate to turn around and flee. They were stunned. Bronze Coffin Ngu escaped? Someone as powerful as Ngu was actually forced to flee in such a sorry state by an unknown shop. Brother Shimin, are we still going to attack? Xiao He's face stiffened as he spoke to Shimin Xian, who was carrying a heavy sword on his back. Shimin Xian's body, which was carrying a heavy sword on his back, also trembled slightly. However, just as he opened his mouth to speak, he felt a wave of energy whistling over. 2 figures could be seen walking in the air, bringing with them a wave of energy. The 2 of them were stunned, and they turned their heads to look at the same time. They saw a woman with a voluptuous figure carrying a gray-haired man as she descended slowly. Chapter 509. Duan Yun's gray hair fluttered in the wind, and his face was filled with despair. He felt that he had lost all his face. However, he had no choice but to accept his fate when he met an enchantress like Ensheng. "What are the 2 of you looking at? Have you never seen a beautiful woman before?" Ensheng, who had just landed, seemed to have felt Shimin Xian and Xiao He's gazes. She immediately frowned and said, "Why was this woman here?" Shimin Xian's serious face revealed a hint of awkwardness. Xiao He, on the other hand, smiled warmly. The 2 of them naturally recognized Ensheng. After all, she was Sorceress Ensheng, the genius alchemist of Heavenly Pill City. She was also the focus of all the major powers. "So it's Grandmasterin. It's an honor to meet you." Xiao He smiled warmly. Even though he was shocked by the scene in the Cloud Mist restaurant, he still had to show his gentlemanly demeanor in front of a beautiful woman. Sorceress Ensheng glanced at him. Her red lips were slightly raised, and her face was filled with disdain. "Perverted? Perverted?" The smile on Xiao He's face froze. He was the genius disciple of the Wind and Thunder Pavilion. He was the dream lover of countless female disciples in the Wind and Thunder Pavilion. Since when did the word perverted come into contact with him? Our little Duan, is better. And Shang placed Duan Yun on the ground. Duan Yun's legs were a little unstable. His eyes were filled with stars, and his face was filled with anger. His gray hair fell on his forehead, making him look a little disheveled. This woman's movement speed was too fast. The frequency at which her breasts moved was also too fast. Duan Yun's eyes hurt, and he felt dizzy. Little Duan, let's go. Big sister will bring you to meet your owner Boo. And Sheng saw Duan Yun's expression and felt that it was interesting. She covered her mouth and smiled. Duan Yun rolled his eyes. What did you mean by my owner Boo? Xiao, he was speechless. He looked at Sorceress and Sheng, who was swaying her voluptuous and seductive body, walking towards the restaurant. His face was full of pain. He was still very conflicted. Was his smile really that perverted? Shimin Xian carried a heavy sword on his back, and his face was solemn. Brother Shimin, let's go over and take a look as well. This store is quite interesting. That woman is actually able to defeat even sacrificial coffin and goo. It's obvious that she isn't a nobody. Let's go over and get to know her. Xiao, he said to Shimin Xian reluctantly as he watched the demoness leave. Shimin Xian glanced at him and did not say anything. He walked toward the store by himself. The closer Duan Yun got to the Cloud Mist restaurant, the more shocked he became. This is fake, right? Why does this restaurant look so familiar? As someone who had stayed in Fong Fong's little store in the Light Wind Empire, he was very sure that the restaurant in front of him was almost 100% similar to Fong Fong's little store. This Cloud Mist restaurant is really lively. This is the first time I've seen a restaurant in my life. That's interesting. Sorceress and Sheng said as she looked at the Cloud Mist restaurant curiously. Duan Yin nodded his head. Heavenly Pill City was the largest alchemy city in the Pill Palace. The popularity of alchemy was even greater than that of Heavenly Shine City and Heavenly Mist City. As for restaurants, they were practically extinct in Heavenly Pill City. If Duan Yun had not traveled around the world, he would not have known about restaurants. He would not have known that there was something in this world that was even more delicious than the fasting pill. When he first tasted Owner Boo's barbecued meat, he was so shocked that he couldn't believe it. His mind was completely captivated by the roasted meat. How could there be such a delicious thing in this world? The most important thing was that he could clearly feel the spiritual energy contained within the roasted meat. Even he was led astray by Bu Fong to use alchemy fire to roast meat. If his teacher, Master Gu He, found out about this, he would definitely be beaten to death. When he ate the Buddha jumps over the wall soup, he felt even more incredulous. The feeling that the Buddha jumps over the wall soup gave him was no weaker than that of an elixir. At that time, his worldview was completely refreshed. Outside the restaurant, there was a crowd of diners. All of them were amazed. What a miraculous restaurant. It could even defeat the puppet sex expert, Wooden Coffin and Goo. This was simply too exciting. Many of the diners were extremely curious about Xiao Bai. Of course, they were also curious about you. Who wouldn't be curious about a beautiful woman? However, none of them dared to look at you carefully. That outrageously beautiful woman was like a demon. Nangong Wuk was laughing heartily at this moment. He was extremely carefree in his heart. Wooden Coffin and Goo, you still dare to act tough in front of me. Don't you know what kind of place this is? This is a place where my elder sister Nethery is. Do you think you can act tough here? Nangong Wuk's smug expression made many people speechless. Nangong Wan was speechless as she rubbed her forehead. Yu's divine might made Nangong Wuk feel that this woman was quite adorable at times. Although her strength was terrifying and she had an eccentric character, since she was Onerbu's woman, she was also Nangong Wuk's woman. Nangong Wuk, who had become bolder, threw a flirtatious glance at Yu, who was sitting at the side in a daze. Yu was taken aback, and she looked at Nangong Wuk as if she was looking an idiot. Some of the diners left, while others continued to order their dishes. It was as if nothing had happened just now, and the store was still open for business. Duan Yin stepped into the store, and his face was filled with shock. Path Understanding Tree, restaurant, Xiaobai, and that black dog lying under the Path Understanding Tree. This was simply inconceivable. Did owner Bu move Fong Fong's little store to Heavenly Mist City? Oh, the environment here is really not bad. Sorceress and Sheng strode into the store with enchanting steps. She looked around and let out a chuckle. The surrounding diners, who were enjoying their meal, were stunned when they saw Sorceress and Sheng. Nangong Wuk was also taken aback, and he sucked in a breath of cold air. He turned around and shouted toward the kitchen, "Old Boo, your enemies have come knocking on your door." Sorceress and Sheng. Wasn't she Old Boo's next opponent? He didn't expect that she would personally come knocking on his door. What was this? Provocation? You dare to provoke us with Nethery around? Don't think that you're awesome just because you have big breasts. So it's you, Nangong Wuk. Long time no see. I heard that your heaven and earth obsidian flame was taken away by someone. How is it? Did you survive the elimination round? When Sheng saw Nangong Wuk, she squinted her eyes and smiled. Big-breasted and, it's not like you don't know my strength. Do I look like someone who relies on external forces? I rely on my inner strength. Nangong Wuk was unhappy. This woman was doubting his inner strength. He glared at Sheng and said, "You're still as shameless as ever. Forget it. I'm not here to look for you today. I heard that the owner of this restaurant is my next opponent, so I came to pay him a visit." Sorceress and Sheng said, "Just order whatever you want to eat. There's no need to pay him a visit." However, Bu Fong didn't walk out of the kitchen. Instead, his calm voice drifted out. "Order." Sorceress and Sheng froze for a moment. Then her lips curled into a smile. "Okay, I'll order. Little Duan. Aren't you close with Owner Bu? Tell me, what's the best dish?" Sorceress and Sheng turned her head and asked Duan Yun, who was staring at the black dog in a daze. Duan Yin came back to his senses and nodded. "What's the best dish?" "The Buddha jumps over the wall soup." There's no more Buddha jumps over the wall soup for today. No one knew when Nethery had appeared. She said with an expressionless face. She was very responsible for her mission. "Give me a portion of red braised meat. I heard that eating meat will help you grow fat. I'm complaining that there's too little meat." Sorceress and Sheng said to you with a smile. You was a beauty. Moreover, you were even more beautiful than her. As a woman, Sorceress and Sheng's first reaction was to raise her guard. However, although she couldn't compare to you in terms of appearance, she still had some areas where she could beat you in an instant. Sorceress and Sheng stuck out her chest and raised her red lips. "I'm proud of my big breasts. Give me a portion of egg fried rice." "I miss Owner Bu's egg fried rice," Duan Yin sighed. He was inexplicably excited. He could eat Owner Bu's egg fried rice again. It would be a lie to say that he wasn't excited. "What about you guys?" You ignored Sorceress and Sheng's provocative gaze and looked at the two people behind them. They were Shimin Xian and Xiao He. The two of them were slightly stunned. What? Should they order? They were just passing by. They just wanted to take a look. I'm the same as him. Shimin Xian opened his mouth. Under Yu's gaze, he actually felt inexplicably nervous. She raised her hand and pointed at Duan Yin. "I'm the same as her. She was really beautiful." Xiao He looked at Yu's breathtakingly beautiful face, and the warmth on his face became even more intense. He smiled and pointed at Sorceress and Sheng. Sorceress and Sheng turned her head and curled her lips in disdain. Yu expressionlessly looked at Sorceress and Sheng and then looked at Xiao He. "Vulgar." Yu calmly spat out these two words. After she finished speaking, she turned around and walked toward the kitchen window. Xiao He wanted to cry, but no tears came out. He was so handsome, so why did everyone say that he was vulgar? Sorceress and Sheng found an empty seat and sat down. She raised her beautiful legs and crossed them. The slit in her skirt made her fair skin faintly discernible. It was extremely enchanting. Duan Yin also sat down excitedly and looked toward the direction of the kitchen with anticipation. After you reported the names of the dishes to Bu Fong, she returned to the path understanding tree and sat in front of it. She continued to stare blankly. After a while, a rich aroma wafted out of the kitchen. The aroma caused Sorceress and Sheng's eyes to instantly light up. It smells so good. No wonder so many alchemists exploded their furnaces in the arena. If this aroma is just a little bit stronger, ordinary people wouldn't be able to resist it. Sorceress and Shung thought to herself. As she thought about this, she suddenly looked forward to seeing the legendary public enemy of alchemists, Onurbu. However, in her heart, she still didn't believe it. As an alchemist who grew up in Heavenly Pill City, she naturally didn't believe that a dish could have the same effect as an elixir. She didn't believe that a chef could be compared to the noblest profession in the Hidden Dragon continent, an alchemist. Shimin Xian and Xiao He felt a little awkward. Because the seats were limited, the two of them, Sorceress and Shang, and Duan Yin were squeezed at the same table. This was especially so for Xiao He. He kept rolling his eyes at Sorceress and Shang. That look of disdain almost made him think that he was really vulgar. The atmosphere became a little awkward. After a long time, a rich aroma wafted out of the kitchen. You walked to the window and brought 2 dishes over. At the same time, a slender figure gradually appeared from the dark entrance of the kitchen. Sorceress and Shang's eyes lit up, and she curiously looked in that direction. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.